Welcome, brave souls, to Georgia State steeped in history. From sprawling plantations to dense forests and battlefields that still carry the weight of blood and sacrifice. Across this land lie sites where soldiers fell, where towns were devastated, and where the echoes of war never fully faded. Battlefields are meant to be places of remembrance and reflection, yet in Georgia, many hold more than memory. Visitors report phantom musket fire, shadowy soldiers marching through the trees, and sudden chills that feel like the brush of a passing ghost. Some hear the distant cries of comrades, others the clash of swords and thunder of cannons, as if time itself refuses to move forward. Tonight, we explore 25 haunted battlefields in Georgia, still echoing gunfire, from Civil War fields to skirmishes long forgotten, each with stories of restless spirits, spectral soldiers, and the lingering cries of war. Some encounters are documented, others whispered among locals, but all share one haunting truth. In these battlefields, history never truly rests. Keep your lantern close, your senses sharp, and your courage steady. Because tonight, the guns of the past still fire. Chickamauga Battlefield, located in northwest Georgia, holds an atmosphere so heavy with history and sorrow that many visitors claim the air itself feels alive with memory. Once the site of one of the bloodiest battles of the American Civil War, the land has become a place where time seems blurred, where the line between the living and the dead feels perilously thin, between the rolling fields, dense woods, and quiet trails. Countless witnesses have reported seeing the impossible, flickers of movement in the fog, cries from no visible source, and the echo of cannon fire long silenced by history. The Battle of Chickamauga took place in September of 1863 and resulted in over 34,000 casualties in just 2 days. The fighting was brutal, chaotic, and close. Men on both sides, Union and Confederate, fell in staggering numbers, often dying without medical aid or proper burial. Visitors who walk the battlefield at dusk often speak of a deep, inexplicable silence that suddenly fills the air. Birds stop singing. The wind seems to die. Then, faintly, the sound of footsteps approaches, heavy, deliberate, and measured, like the march of a soldier. Yet, when one turns to look, no one is there. Some report hearing the creak of leather straps, the metallic rattle of muskets, and the distant rumble of cannon wheels rolling over uneven ground. Paranormal investigators have captured recordings of whispered orders, gunshots, and even cries of agonist sounds that seem to seep from the ground itself. One of the most infamous spirits associated with Chickamauga is known as Old Green Eyes. This spectral figure is said to roam the fields and wooded paths of the park, his glowing green eyes piercing through the mist. Legends vary. Some claim he was a Confederate soldier, decapitated by cannon fire, doomed to wander in search of his lost head. Others say he is a non-human entity, a guardian of the dead, who watches over the restless spirits left behind after the battle. Park rangers, tourists, and Civil War reenactors have all reported seeing a dark shape lurking among the trees at night, its eyes gleaming like emerald fire. The sight of Old Green Eyes is said to bring a chill so deep it feels as if the air itself has turned to ice. In one particularly eerie story, a group of visitors camping near the battlefield awoke to what they thought was thunder. But when they stepped outside their tents, they saw flashes of light rolling across the field, not lightning, but what looked like the flicker of cannon fire. They heard distant drums and bugles, the unmistakable roar of battle. Then, just as suddenly as it began, everything vanished, leaving only silence. The next morning, they discovered they had camped on the very spot where some of the heaviest fighting took place over 150 years ago. Soldiers' ghosts aren't the only presences said to roam Chickamauga. Many visitors speak of spectral horses galloping through the fog, their hooves thudding against the earth, though no tracks are ever found. Others have seen women in 19th-century clothing wandering among the graves, perhaps widows or nurses, still searching for lost loved ones. Rangers on late patrols have reported hearing voices calling their names or feeling unseen hands brush against their arms. Even seasoned staff members admit there are parts of the park they avoid after dark. The Snodgrass House, which served as a field hospital during the battle, remains one of the most haunted spots in the area. Here, the wounded were treated in conditions so horrific that the floors reportedly ran slick with blood. Today, visitors to the house describe hearing moans of pain, the clatter of surgical tools, and soft whispers coming from empty rooms. Some have even claimed to see bloodstains reappearing on the wooden floors before fading away again. Paranormal teams using infrared cameras have recorded cold spots and shadowy figures moving through the rooms, as if surgeons and patients from another century continue their grim work. Throughout the battlefield, strange lights are often seen floating among the trees, blue, white, or orange orbs that hover silently before vanishing into thin air. Many believe these are the spirits of soldiers, manifesting as energy. Others think they are echoes of lanterns, once carried by medics and mourners as they search the fields for survivors. Photographers have captured these mysterious lights on camera, though none have been able to explain them. Electronic devices also malfunction frequently. Within the park, cameras shut off, batteries drain instantly, and GPS systems lose signal entirely. Local residents who live near Chickamauga tell stories of hearing gunfire echoing through the woods late at night, even when no reenactments are scheduled. Some claim to have seen ghostly formations moving across the fields under the moonlight, like troops preparing for battle. Drivers passing through the park after dark have reported seeing soldiers standing by the roadside, only for them to vanish when headlights sweep over them. One woman describes seeing a young man in a tattered gray uniform step into the path of her car. She braked hard, but he disappeared before her eyes. When she got out to look, there was no one there, only a faint scent of gunpowder lingering in the air. Historians and spiritualists alike believe the emotional energy of Chickamauga is what fuels its hauntings. The immense loss of life, the suffering, and the unresolved trauma of thousands of soldiers created a lingering imprint on the land. Whether these manifestations are intelligent spirits or echoes of history replaying themselves, few places in America carry such a profound weight of sorrow. Walking through Chickamauga today, it's hard not to feel the pull of the past. The rustling of leaves sounds eerily like distant marching. The mist that drifts across the fields takes on the shapes of figures long gone. Visitors who come here seeking history often leave with a sense of awe and sometimes unease. For while the cannons are silent and the flags no longer wave in battle, the spirits of Chickamauga remain. In the quiet after dusk, when the last visitors have gone and the shadows stretch long across the ground, the echoes of war rise again, reminding all who enter that some battles never truly end. Kennesaw Mountain, located in Cobb County, Georgia, rises above the surrounding landscape as both a natural landmark and a solemn reminder of the nation's past. During the Civil War, this mountain was the site of one of the most significant and brutal clashes between Union and Confederate forces in 1864. The Battle of Kennesaw Mountain was part of General William T. Sherman's Atlanta campaign, a relentless march toward the heart of the Confederacy. Thousands of soldiers died here amid dense smoke, thunderous cannon fire, and the screams of men fighting for their lives. Today, the battle is long over, but the echoes of that conflict seem to remain. Visitors to Kennesaw Mountain National Battlefield Park often speak of experiences that defy explanation: ghostly soldiers wandering the ridges, muskets firing in the distance, and flags waving in windless air. The battlefield itself stretches across rolling hills, thick forests, and steep slopes. To the casual hiker, it's a place of beauty and quiet reflection. But for those who linger after sunset or walk the trails alone, it becomes something else entirely. Many report hearing the faint beat of drums or the sharp crack of musket fire reverberating through the woods. Sometimes, these sounds come in volleys, as if an invisible army were locked in an endless reenactment. Yet when visitors investigate, they find no one there, only the silence of the forest and the uneasy feeling of being watched. Some of the most compelling stories come from those who have encountered ghostly apparitions along the mountain's ridges. Hikers have described seeing figures in tattered uniforms standing among the trees or marching across open ground. These apparitions often appear in the early morning mist or just before dusk, when the light softens and the shadows grow long. Witnesses say the soldiers move with purpose, but make no sound. Some fade into the fog, while others seem to vanish the moment they are noticed. A few people have even claimed to lock eyes with a soldier, only to watch him dissolve into thin air moments later. On still days when the air is thick and the forest is quiet, visitors have reported hearing faint shouts, orders being barked, and the muffled roar of cannon fire echoing across the hills. Paranormal investigators have captured strange electronic voice, phenomenal whispers of words like charge or hold the line. One ranger recounted patrolling the park one night and hearing footsteps crunching leaves just behind him. When he turned, no one was there, but the sound continued to circle him, as if invisible soldiers were moving through the brush. Perhaps the most unsettling phenomenon of all is the presence of cold spots. Even in the height of summer, when the Georgia air is thick and humid, sudden drops in temperature have been recorded at specific points on the trails. Hikers describe feeling an icy chill sweep over them without warning, as if someone has walked directly through them. Some say it's the sensation of a soldier passing by, unaware that time has moved on. Cameras and electronic devices often malfunction in these areas. Batteries drain, screens flicker, and photos sometimes reveal strange mists or figures that weren't visible to the naked eye. The mountain itself seems to breathe with memory. One of the most frequently visited spots, known as Cheatham Hill, is particularly active with paranormal reports. It was here that hundreds of soldiers were killed during a fierce frontal assault. Many of their bodies were buried in shallow graves where they fell. Visitors walking near the Illinois monument built to honor Union soldiers often claim to feel overwhelming sadness or nausea, as if absorbing the pain of those who died. Some have even heard moaning or the sound of someone whispering their name, carried on the wind. Park rangers who work this area say they have learned to respect these sensations and move quietly when they occur. A peculiar and haunting detail, often reported, involves ghostly flags. Witnesses have seen what appears to be a Confederate battle flag or Union banner fluttering atop the hill. Though there is no wind and no visible fabric, these spectral flags shimmer faintly before fading, like the last memory of a war long past. Some believe this is the mountain's way of preserving the honor and spirit of those who fought and fell here. Others think the energy of the battlefields, soaked into the earth by trauma, creates visions of what once was. Local residents who live near Kennesaw Mountain tell stories of phantom lights moving through the trees at night. Some say they resemble lanterns carried by soldiers searching for wounded comrades. Drivers on nearby roads have seen figures crossing the street, only for them to disappear when headlights reach them. On foggy nights, motorists sometimes hear what sounds like a cannon blast echoing through the valley. Yet there are no reenactments, no fireworks, and no storms, just the inexplicable sounds of a battle replaying itself in the distance. The Kennesaw Mountain area is steeped in both history and energy. Thousands of lives were lost in a short span of time, and the emotional intensity of that event, fear, pain, courage, and despair may have created a lasting imprint. This theory, known as residual haunting, suggests that these sounds and sights are echoes from the past, replaying themselves like a recording. Even skeptics who visit the park admit there is something unsettling about its atmosphere. Rangers advise against being on the trails after dark, not out of superstition, but because of safety. Yet many who have experienced the strange phenomena here say that the darkness only amplifies what's already present, the unseen army that never left. Today, Kennesaw Mountain stands as both a monument to history and a reminder of how deeply the past can cling to a place. The cannons are silent, the camps long gone, but the echoes remain. Those who walk these trails after the sun dips behind the trees may hear the faint rattle of musket fire or feel a sudden chill creep up their spine. In those moments, the divide between now and then vanishes, and for a heartbeat, the mountain remembers. The Atlanta battlefield in Fulton County, Georgia, is one of those rare places where history still seems to breathe through the modern world. Today, highways, neighborhoods, and office buildings cover much of what was once a violent and chaotic landscape. Yet beneath the pavement and progress lies the memory of one of the most significant battles of the Civil War, the Siege of Atlanta in 1864. Thousands of soldiers, both Union and Confederate, fought and died in the city's streets, fields, and hillsides. And according to generations of residents, not all of them have moved on. The haunting of Atlanta's old battlefield is a lingering echo of that dark summer, a place where the past and present seem to exist side by side. The Battle of Atlanta was part of General William T. Sherman's campaign to capture the vital Confederate stronghold. The city was a crucial railroad and supply hub, and its loss would cripple the South's ability to continue the war. For weeks, cannon fire thundered across the landscape as Union and Confederate forces clashed in brutal combat. The siege left much of the area in ruins. Thousands of men fell where they fought, their bodies hastily buried or lost beneath the wreckage of burning buildings. The battle was a turning point in the war, but it came at an unbearable cost. Many believe that the emotional and physical suffering endured here has left an indelible mark on the city itself. Even as Atlanta grew into a bustling modern metropolis, stories of strange occurrences never faded. In neighborhoods built near the old battle lines, places like East Atlanta, Grant Park, and Edgewood, residents have reported seeing shadowy figures marching along quiet streets at night. Some appear in faded gray or blue uniforms, their faces pale and expressionless, moving in solemn silence. Others are heard but never seen, the rhythmic tramp of boots echoing down the road when no one is there, or the clink of metal gear as if a company of soldiers were passing by in the dark. These reports often come late at night, during fog or heavy rain, when the air feels heavy and charged. In the area around Oakland Cemetery, which served as a burial site for many Confederate soldiers, the hauntings grow more intense. Visitors have claimed to see ghostly forms wandering between the gravesmen with torn uniforms, faces smeared with soot, and eyes full of despair. Some witnesses have described hearing low moans and the distant sound of someone crying for help. The atmosphere around the cemetery is said to shift suddenly, growing cold and silent even on warm summer days. Paranormal investigators have recorded unexplained voices, cannon fire, and what sounds like the clash of bayonets during the night. One group captured an EVP, a disembodied voice, whispering the words, "We're still here." Grant Park, once a wooded area near the battlefield's southern edge, has long been a focal point for ghostly activity. Locals jogging or walking their dogs at dawn have seen figures drifting through the mistmen in tattered uniforms, some carrying muskets, others limping as though still wounded. The apparitions vanish when approached, leaving behind only the faint scent of gunpowder. In one particularly chilling account, a park maintenance worker described hearing the unmistakable sound of drums and bugles one morning, echoing faintly from the trees. When he went to investigate, the air turned icy, and the sound stopped as abruptly as they began. He refused to return to that part of the park alone after dark. Downtown Atlanta holds its own collection of hauntings connected to the siege. Beneath the city's streets lies a network of tunnels and old foundations, remnants of pre-war buildings and supply lines. Workers restoring these areas have reported hearing footsteps echoing through the tunnels, accompanied by whispers in voices that seem to come from the past. Some claim to have felt a sudden hand on their shoulder or seen the flicker of a lantern deep in the darkness. No one has ever found a rational explanation for these occurrences, though many believe the restless spirits of soldiers still patrol the old routes where they once carried ammunition and supplies. Cold spots are common across the historic battlefield zone. Even in the peak of summer, sudden drops in temperature strike without warning, leaving those nearby shivering and uneasy. One local resident living near the old battle lines reported feeling an intense chill sweep through her home late one night. She looked outside and saw, to her astonishment, a group of men in Civil War uniforms standing in her yard. They appeared confused, glancing around as if searching for something. Within moments, they faded away, leaving no footprints on the dewy grass. She later learned that her house sat on what had been a Confederate defensive trench. Another eerie phenomenon often reported is the sound of distant, cries agonized voices that seem to drift through the night air. Some describe them as the moans of wounded soldiers, others as shouts for help that fade before anyone can locate the source. Late-night drivers on old battlefield routes have heard screams that echo through the trees or across open lots that once saw heavy combat. When they stop to look, the night returns to silence, as if the cries were nothing more than memories replaying themselves through time. Several old homes in Fulton County, built near the remnants of the battlefield, are said to be haunted as well. In these houses, objects move on their own, doors slam without wind, and the faint smell of smoke or blood sometimes fills the air. Residents speak of hearing footsteps pacing the halls and seeing the fleeting reflection of uniformed men in mirrors. One homeowner reported waking in the night to find a figure standing at the foot of a better soldier with a blood-stained bandage around his head. When she gasped, he looked at her with a sorrowful expression and vanished into the darkness. Many historians and paranormal researchers believe that the haunting energy of Atlanta's battlefield is tied to the sheer intensity of the suffering that occurred there. The siege lasted for weeks, filled with fear, exhaustion, and death. Men fought at close quarters, often hand-to-hand, surrounded by smoke and fire. The city's residents endured constant bombardment, their homes destroyed, their loved ones killed. Such trauma, they argue, does not fade easily. It lingers in the ground, in the air, and perhaps even in the walls of the city that rose from the ashes. Today, as cars pass over what was once hallowed ground, few realize that beneath their wheels lies a landscape soaked in history and sorrow. The cannons are long silent, and the soldiers' bones lie buried deep beneath the modern city, but their presence can still be felt. In the quiet hours before dawn, when the streets empty and the city holds its breath, some say you can still hear the faint echo of battle, the distant roll of drums, the cry of the wounded, and the soft march of those who never left the Atlanta battlefield. The Jonesboro battlefield in Jonesboro, Georgia, may seem calm and peaceful today, covered in quiet fields and framed by patches of thick woods. But beneath that stillness lies the memory of unimaginable chaos and suffering. This land once thundered with the sounds of musket fire, the cries of the wounded, and the thunder of cavalry charging through smoke and mud. The Battle of Jonesboro, fought in late August of 1864, marked the final struggle for control of Atlanta during the Civil War. Thousands of soldiers fell here, men who never saw their homes again. Today, locals say the land has never forgotten. Visitors report shadowy figures moving through the trees, the sound of distant cannon fire echoing across empty fields, and ghostly riders galloping into the mist only to vanish before the eyes of stunned witnesses. The battle itself was brief but devastating. It lasted just 2 days, yet the toll was enormous. Union and Confederate forces clashed fiercely as General William T. Sherman's army pushed to cut off the last Confederate supply lines to Atlanta. When the smoke cleared, hundreds lay dead, and the road to the city was open. The fall of Atlanta soon followed, signaling the beginning of the end for the Confederacy. Many of the soldiers who died here were never properly buried. Their graves were lost to history, and it's said that their restless spirits still roam the land where they took their final breaths. Visitors walking the old trails and open fields around the battlefield often describe an eerie, almost oppressive atmosphere. On certain evenings, as fog rolls in from the woods, shadows seem to move against the mist, taking the shapes of men. Some appear as dark silhouettes carrying rifles or flags. Others are seen on horseback, their figures translucent in the fading light. Witnesses say these ghostly riders often gallop silently across the fields before vanishing into thin air, leaving behind no hoofprints in the grass. The apparition of a full cavalry charge, spectral and soundless, has been seen by more than one group of startled onlookers. The riders fade into the haze as quickly as they appear, as if replaying a moment of battle again and again. One of the strangest and most frequently reported phenomena is the sound of cannon fire echoing through the countryside. Locals have grown accustomed to hearing it on still nights, to deep, rolling boom that seems to come from nowhere. When they check the skies, there are no storms, no thunder. The sound comes from the ground itself, reverberating through the air as if from a distant battle that has never truly ended. Paranormal investigators have recorded these sounds at multiple points around the site, along with faint voices and commands in tones too muffled to make out. Many believe these are residual hauntings, energy imprinted on the land from the sheer emotional force of the battle. The woods that bordered the fields are said to be the most active area of all. Hikers and explorers who wander through them have reported the unmistakable feeling of being watched. Some claim to see movement between the trees, figures in torn uniforms darting through the underbrush. A few have caught brief glimpses of faces pale and hollow, eyes reflecting light even when no light source is visible. There are reports of phantom footsteps following visitors, keeping pace just out of sight, only to stop abruptly when the person turns around. The silence that follows is often deafening, as though the forest itself is holding its breath. On foggy mornings, when the mist sits low over the ground, the battlefield transforms into something otherworldly. People walking along the trails have seen full apparitions materialize only a few feet away, soldiers standing motionless, some holding muskets, others staring into the distance as if waiting for orders that will never come. These figures often fade into the mist, leaving behind faint impressions in the dew-covered grass. When observers move closer, they find footprints that seem to end abruptly, as though the men who made them simply vanished. One park visitor recalled seeing a line of these prints stretch across an open path, only to stop halfway through the field. The air was still, the fog thick, and yet the feeling of presence was overwhelming. He later described it as walking into a memory that didn't belong to him. Locals who live near the old battlefield have their own unsettling stories. On quiet nights, they sometimes hear the clatter of metal and the rhythmic thud of hooves moving across the land. Some have heard what sounds like orders being shouted from invisible commanders, or the faint notes of a bugle carried on the wind. Dogs in nearby homes often bark at empty spaces, their fur standing on end as if sensing something unseen. One family reported seeing a group of soldiers walking single file through their backyard late one night. The figures glowed faintly in the moonlight, their uniforms torn and stained. They walked silently through a fence and disappeared into the woods beyond. The cold spots that appear around the battlefield are another chilling sign of lingering energy. Even on hot Georgia afternoons, sudden pockets of icy air form in certain spots, leaving visitors shivering. Cameras and phones tend to malfunction in these areas, batteries draining in seconds. Paranormal teams have documented strange electromagnetic fluctuations and captured ghostly mists on infrared camera stints, shapes that move independently of the natural fog. Some researchers believe these are the spiritual remnants of soldiers trapped between life and death, their energy anchored to the site of their final moments. Perhaps the most famous ghost story tied to the Jonesboro battlefield involves the apparition of a Confederate officer said to appear near the center of the old battleground. Witnesses describe him as tall, with a long gray coat and a sword at his side. He's been seen standing still in the middle of a field, staring toward the horizon as if waiting for reinforcements that will never come. Those who approach him report a sudden drop in temperature and a heavy sense of sadness. Before anyone can get too close, the figure fades, leaving behind only the faint scent of smoke and gunpowder. Whether these manifestations are restless spirits or echoes of a violent past, few who visit Jonesboro deny that the place holds something extraordinary. The land seems charged with memory, as if every gust of wind carries whispers from another time. Historians, paranormal enthusiasts, and casual hikers alike agree that the battlefield possesses an energy unlike any other, a quiet but undeniable presence that reminds visitors of the countless lives lost there. Even now, as the sun sets and mist curls across the fields, those who walk the land can almost hear the distant roll of drums and the faint cry of soldiers carried through the air. In the haunting calm of Jonesboro battlefield, the past is never truly gone. It lingers, waiting, echoing forever in the Georgia night. The Ezra Church battlefield, located on the western side of Atlanta, stands as one of the most haunted and historically charged sites in Georgia. Though the city around it has grown into a busy urban landscape, the land itself still seems to breathe with echoes of its violent past. During the summer of 1864, this quiet stretch of ground became a scene of unimaginable bloodshed as Union and Confederate forces clashed in the Battle of Ezra Church, one of the pivotal engagements in General William T. Sherman's Atlanta campaign. Thousands of men fought and died here under a scorching Georgia sun, and even today, many believe their spirits have never truly left. The battle took place on July 28, 1864. When Confederate troops attempted to stop Sherman's advancing army from capturing the city, the Union forces, led by General Oliver O. Howard, were well positioned on a ridge near Ezra Church, ready for an attack. What followed was a day of fierce, chaotic fighting. Confederate soldiers charged repeatedly against fortified Union lines, only to be cut down by rifle and cannon fire. In a matter of hours, over 3,000 men were killed, wounded, or missing. The cries of the dying filled the air, and the smoke of musket fire turned the clear sky dark. By the day's end, the ground was soaked with blood, and the small rural church for which the battle was named stood surrounded by the dead. Time has since covered the scars of war, but those who visit the area say something in the air still feels wrong. Locals who live near the battlefield report strange sounds and sensations that seem to come from another era. On calm nights, when the wind dies and the world grows still, people have heard the sharp crack of distant gunfire echoing through the trees. Sometimes it comes as a single shot, other times as a full volley, as if a ghostly battle were being replayed in the darkness. The sounds fade as quickly as they appear, leaving behind only silence and the uneasy certainty that they were real. Witnesses have also described seeing phantom smoke rising from the ground in areas where no fires burn. The misty plumes twist upward, gray and faintly glowing, before dissolving into the night air. Some say it smells faintly of gunpowder, while others report catching the scent of burning wood and flesh. Paranormal investigators who have studied the site believe this phenomenon may be a residual haunting, an imprint of the day's horrific energy forever seared into the landscape. Others simply believe it's the battlefield remembering what happened there. The ghosts of soldiers are seen most often among the trees that line the old ridge. Hikers, joggers, and park visitors have reported seeing dark shapes moving between the trunksmen in outdated uniforms, muskets slung across their shoulders. They are usually silent, their faces pale and expressionless, marching in lines that fade into the forest. Some witnesses say the apparitions appear solid at first, almost human, before thinning into wisps of smoke and vanishing completely. One park ranger described seeing what he thought was a reenactor standing near the trail at dusk, only to realize the man's uniform was stained with blood and torn at the shoulder. When he looked again, the figure was gone. Those who walk the battlefield after sundown often speak of sudden cold drafts sweeping through the air. Even on the hottest summer nights, the temperature drops sharply, accompanied by an intense sense of unease. Some describe feeling as if invisible eyes are watching them from the trees. Others report a prickling sensation on the back of their necks, or the unmistakable feeling of someone standing just behind them. When they turn, there is nothing there, only the rustle of leaves and the whisper of wind that wasn't there moments before. Electronic devices tend to malfunction around the battlefield. Cameras, low-power photos appear blurred, and recordings often pick up faint sounds not heard by the human ear: footsteps crunching on dry leaves, muffled voices calling orders, or the low rumble of distant drums. Investigators who have set up night vision cameras have captured strange anomalies: lights floating just above the ground, shadowy figures darting between trees, and sudden flashes of brightness that appear like musket fire. Many visitors have experienced static interference on their phones or radios, with bursts of noise that resemble crackling fire or hurried whispers. The old church that once stood near the center of the battle is long gone, but those who visit the site where it once stood claim to feel an inexplicable heaviness in the air. The ground seems colder there, and many report hearing faint hymns or voices singing softly, as though from within the earth. Some say they have heard the tolling of a church bell that no longer exists, a sound that drifts through the night and fades before its source can be found. Locals tell stories of a preacher's ghost said to appear on moonless nights, walking the site of the old church as if searching for his congregation among the dead. Residents who live near the battlefield tell of lights appearing in their yards, small orbs glowing white or blue, drifting through the trees and vanishing into the woods. Some have seen these lights hovering above the ground, while others claim they dart away when approached. Dogs often refuse to go near certain parts of the area, growling or whimpering at invisible presences. One family reported hearing heavy footsteps outside their home late one night, followed by the sound of distant marching. When they looked out their window, they saw a line of shadowy figures moving slowly across the field, their shapes faintly illuminated by the moonlight. As they watched, the figures disappeared one by one into the mist. Even during the day, the battlefield has an uncanny stillness to it. Birds fall silent, and the air feels thick and heavy, as though the land itself is holding its breath. Visitors who spend time there often describe an overwhelming sadness or pressure in their chest, as if absorbing the emotions of those who perished. Some leave abruptly, unable to shake the sense of dread that lingers long after they've gone. Others return again and again, drawn by something they can't explain, a strange pull that connects them to the past. The haunting of the Ezra Church battlefield is not loud or violent. It is quiet, persistent, and deeply sorrowful. It feels as though the spirits here are not malicious but restless, bound to the land by pain and unfinished duty. They are soldiers caught between worlds, replaying their final moments in an endless loop. As the city of Atlanta continues to grow around it, the battlefield remains a pocket of the past, a place where the echoes of war still drift through the trees. When night falls and the air grows cold, the sound of spectral gunfire can sometimes still be heard, reminding all who pass that the ghosts of Ezra Church have not forgotten the day the earth itself became their grave. New Hope Church, in Paulding County, Georgia, is one of those quiet, rural places that seems almost too still, as if the land itself is holding its breath. Surrounded by old trees and winding country roads, the small white church stands near the site of one of the most ferocious clashes of the Atlanta campaign during the Civil War. On May 25, 1864, thousands of Union and Confederate soldiers met here in what came to be called the Hellhole, a brutal, rain-soaked fight that left the ground thick with mud and blood. The peaceful stillness of today's churchyard hides the memory of that day. But according to countless visitors and locals, the echoes of battle have never truly faded. People who visit the site often describe an unsettling sensation even before they reach the church grounds. The forest surrounding the area seems unnaturally quiet, and birds will sometimes stop singing all at once, leaving only the rustle of leaves and the crunch of footsteps. Some have said that, as they walk along the trail toward the open field, they begin to hear faint sounds that belong to the present day. The far-off roll of drums, the metallic rattle of canteens, or the muffled thud of boots moving in unison. Many have turned back, certain they were not alone. The first reported hauntings at New Hope Church date back to the early 1900s, when local farmers claimed to see ghostly processions moving through the fields on misty mornings. One farmer described waking before dawn to see what he thought were men marching across the low ground, their outlines barely visible in the haze. He called out to them, thinking they might be lost hunters, but the figures simply vanished as the fog lifted, leaving behind no footprints in the damp soil. Others began to share similar accounts, shadowy silhouettes appearing along the tree line, faint cries echoing through the night, and the unmistakable sound of cannon fire reverberating in the distance when no storms or reenactments were taking place. Those who have dared to visit after dark tell of even stranger phenomena. A thick, unnatural mist is said to roll across the fields just after midnight, swallowing the church and the gravestones until only the faint outline of the steeple can be seen. Within that fog, people claim to hear the crack of musket fire and the screams of wounded men. Some have seen what appeared to be ghostly soldiers standing silently near the church steps, men in torn gray or blue uniforms, their faces pale and expressionless, their eyes hollow as if searching for something they can never find. One local paranormal investigator described setting up audio recorders near the old battlefield line, When he played the tape back later, he heard what sounded like dozens of voices shouting over each other, orders, cries for help, and the low rumble of cannon fire. Yet during the investigation, he had heard nothing. Another team using thermal cameras reported detecting sudden drops in temperature that moved across the field as if following invisible figures. The air would grow icy cold, then warm again within seconds, leaving those present trembling and uneasy. Perhaps the most chilling encounters come from those who visit during the day, when the sun is high and the sky is clear. Hikers often stop near the monument that marks the center of the battlefield, where a large granite slab bears the names of regiments who fought and died there. Visitors have reported feeling a sudden rush of emotion, sorrow, dread, or an overwhelming sense of loss, as if the air itself carries the pain of the fallen. A few have said they felt a hand brush against their shoulder, or heard a whisper carried on the breeze, though no one else was near. There are stories of a lone drummer boy seen near the edge of the woods, his small figure partially hidden among the trees. Witnesses describe him wearing a tattered uniform, carrying a drum with a single broken strap. He is said to appear most often on cloudy afternoons, walking slowly toward the church before fading into the air. Local legend holds that he was no older than 15 when he died in the chaos of battle, separated from his unit, and struck down before he could flee. Some say his spirit lingers, still searching for the comrades he lost that day. Even the church itself has a haunted reputation. Visitors sometimes find its doors swinging open when the air is perfectly still, and those who step inside describe hearing faint footsteps pacing along the wooden floorboards. Others have claimed to see the pews shake slightly, as though disturbed by invisible weight, or to catch a glimpse of flickering lights that dance along the altar before vanishing. On rare occasions, parishioners attending evening services have heard distant thunder that turns into cannon fire, a haunting echo of the violence that once raged just beyond the sanctuary walls. Locals often speak with quiet respect about the battlefield's spirits. They do not see them as malevolent, but rather as remnants of men trapped in the memories of their final moments. The area is peaceful most days, and many believe the hauntings are simply a reflection of grief that refuses to fade. The soldiers who fell at New Hope Church were young, frightened, and far from home, many buried in shallow, unmarked graves. The land itself seems to remember, and in its remembering, it replays fragments of their final struggle. Standing there today, it's difficult to reconcile the beauty of the countryside with the horrors it once witnessed. The wind sighs through the pines, carrying faint echoes of the past, whether one believes in ghosts or not. It's hard to deny the strange power that lingers in the air, a heaviness that presses against the chest, a chill that runs down the spine without warning. As daylight fades and shadows lengthen across the fields, New Hope Church becomes a place where history feels alive, whispering through the trees and calling softly from the earth. Some say those who listen closely can still hear the soldiers marching, their silent footsteps carrying on forever, bound to the battlefield where hope once died. Allatoona Pass in Bartow County, Georgia, lies quietly today beneath a canopy of pines and oaks, its steep red clay hills concealing a bloody past. The area once echoed with the roar of cannons and the cries of dying men during one of the fiercest confrontations of the Civil War. On October 5, 1864, Union and Confederate forces clashed here in the Battle of Allatoona Pass, a fight to control the Western and Atlantic Railroad, a crucial supply line feeding General Sherman's army. The battle lasted only a few hours, but when the smoke cleared, more than 1,500 soldiers lay dead or wounded in the narrow gorge. The pass became a grave for many who were never properly buried, and to this day, locals and visitors claim the spirits of those who died still linger, reliving their final moments among the trees. The old railroad cut that runs through Allatoona Pass is now part of a peaceful hiking trail, but those who walk it after sunset describe an entirely different atmosphere. Visitors have reported hearing the distant crack of rifles echoing down the ravine, the rhythmic boom of cannon fire, and the faint clatter of metal on stone, as if unseen soldiers are still fighting to defend their ground. The air often grows icy cold in patches, even during Georgia's humid summer nights. and some people have felt invisible hands brush against them as they pass through the narrowest part of the pass. One of the most common reports comes from hikers who hear voices whispering just beyond the tree line. The words are indistinct, urgent, emotional, like orders shouted through the chaos of battle. But when they turn to look, there's no one there. Others describe seeing faint lights bobbing through the woods, small orbs that move like lanterns carried by unseen men. Paranormal investigators who set up equipment in the area have captured electronic voice phenomena. Faint voices repeating words like "hold the line" and "Dante fall back." Thermal cameras have detected moving heat signatures where no living presence could be found, and motion sensors have triggered with no visible cause. The most famous apparition at Alatoona Pass is known locally as the Sentinel. Witnesses describe a lone soldier standing guard near the edge of the ravine, dressed in a tattered uniform that appears blue in the moonlight. His figure is clear and solid until approached. Then he fades slowly into the darkness, leaving behind an eerie chill. Some believe he was a Union guard tasked with protecting the supply depot and the railroad, refusing even in death to abandon his post. Others say he is a Confederate soldier who died trying to take the pass and now watches over it, unable to rest. Whatever his origin, his presence is so consistent that some visitors claim to feel his gaze long before they see him. There are also reports of spectral soldiers moving between the trees along the ridge. They appear in groups, sometimes as faint silhouettes, sometimes as clear as living men, marching silently in single file before vanishing into thin air. Campers nearby have awakened in the middle of the night to hear the rhythmic tramp of boots passing by their tents, accompanied by muffled voices and the clinking of gear. A few have claimed to see ghostly battle lines forming in the mist that settles in the ravine at dawn. Figures kneeling, loading muskets, and firing into an invisible enemy before dissolving with the first rays of sunlight. Locals have long spoken of the strange sounds that fill the pass on quiet nights. The phantom gunfire is the most common, often mistaken by newcomers for distant hunters or fireworks. But the sounds are unlike any modern weapon, sharp, cracking reports that echo off the cliffs before fading into silence. Some have heard cannon blasts so real that they felt the vibration under their feet, only to find no smoke, no movement, no trace of human activity. The area has also been known for sudden, unexplained temperature drops. People standing on the trail describe walking through invisible walls of cold air, their breath visible even in warm weather, the hairs on their arms standing straight up. One of the most unsettling stories involves the old redoubt, a dirt fortification that still overlooks the pass. Visitors who linger there after dark have reported the scent of gunpowder and smoke filling the air. Though no fires are burning nearby, some have seen figures crouched behind the earthworks, peering out as if waiting for an approaching enemy. These forms remain only a moment before fading like mist, leaving behind only silence and the feeling of being watched. The air on that ridge is said to grow heavy and oppressive, making it hard to breathe, as if the lingering fear and pain of the soldiers who once defended it still hang in the atmosphere. In recent years, paranormal teams have conducted overnight investigations at Alatoona Pass, recording strange phenomena. One team reported hearing an entire volley of musket fire, followed by faint cries for help and the sound of men running, though their instruments detected no living presence nearby. Another group captured photos showing semi-transparent shapes moving across the trail, figures too defined to be tricks of light or camera error. Locals who live near the site have grown accustomed to these tales, yet even they admit there are nights when the wind carries the echoes of battle, and the stillness of the forest feels alive with unseen eyes. Despite its haunted reputation, Alatoona Pass draws visitors year-round, hikers, history buffs, and those seeking a connection to the past. Some come to honor the soldiers who fought there. Others come in search of proof that the spirits remain. All leave with a sense that this place remembers. The land itself seems scarred, not just by the trenches and fortifications, but by the energy of lives cut short. As the sun sets and the forest darkens, shadows stretch long across the ravine. The cicadas grow quiet, and the air becomes heavy with an otherworldly calm. It's in those moments, between light and darkness, that the past feels closest, when the echoes of gunfire roll faintly through the trees and ghostly figures drift among the shadows. Whether these are true spirits or imprints of memory left behind by war, one thing is certain: Allatoona Pass is a place where history refuses to sleep. The soldiers who died defending it remain bound to the land, their presence felt by all who walk the trail. And as long as the wind whispers through those hills, the echoes of battle will never fully fade. Pickett's Mill, located deep in the quiet woods of Paulding County, Georgia, is a place where the past still clings tightly to the land. Today, it is a state historic site, a serene stretch of forest and rolling hills dotted with trails, streams, and remnants of Civil War trenches. But beneath the stillness lies the memory of one of the bloodiest and most tragic battles of the Atlanta Campaign. On May 27, 1864, Union and Confederate forces collided here in brutal close-quarters combat. When it was over, nearly 1,600 soldiers lay dead or wounded, many left where they fell. Locals say the battlefield never truly healed, and on certain nights, the dead still rise from the mist, their restless spirits replaying the battle that ended their lives. Those who visit Pickett's Mill after dark speak of an eerie atmosphere that seems to come alive once the sun slips below the horizon. The forest, usually full of night sounds, grows silent, as if nature itself is holding its breath. Visitors say the air grows heavy, and cold drafts sweep suddenly through the trees, chilling the skin like invisible hands brushing past. It's as though the battle is still happening, replaying over and over somewhere just out of sight. Hikers exploring the old battlefield trails have reported seeing ghostly figures moving among the trees. They appear as faint silhouettes at first, shapes in gray and blue, flickering like smoke, before vanishing completely. Some have seen soldiers standing motionless on the ridges, their faces pale and unreadable, muskets in hand, watching silently before fading into thin air. Others claim to have spotted groups of men walking single file through the forest, their forms partially transparent, their movements deliberate and weary. They never make a sound, yet the weight of their presence is unmistakable. The feeling of being watched is one of the most common experiences at Pickett's Mill. Many visitors describe walking along the wooded trails only to feel eyes following them from the shadows. Some hear twigs snapping behind them, soft footsteps crunching on the leaves, or the faint metallic jingle of a canteen or belt buckle. Yet when they turn around, there is no one there. Paranormal investigators who have spent nights at the site report unexplained fluctuations in temperature and sudden bursts of electromagnetic activity. Audio recorders have captured faint whispers, short, urgent phrases like "hold the line," "get down," and "they're coming." The words are often barely audible, but unmistakably human. During the battle, Confederate troops ambushed Union soldiers, attempting to advance through the gully, catching them off guard. The slaughter was swift and merciless. Today, the ravine remains unnaturally quiet. Visitors say that when you stand there, the air grows still and the temperature drops dramatically. Some have heard distant groans or muffled sobs, as if the wounded are still lying in the dirt, calling for help that will never come. Others report seeing flashes of light deep within the ravine, not from flashlights or fireflies, but sudden bursts of illumination, like gunfire frozen in time. Locals tell stories of a particular spirit, known simply as the Lieutenant. He is said to appear on the ridge above the ravine, a tall figure in a faded Union uniform. Witnesses say he stands perfectly still, surveying the field below, his expression unreadable. On foggy nights, he appears surrounded by a faint bluish glow, and some claim to hear him call out softly, as if giving orders. When anyone approaches, he vanishes, leaving behind only a lingering chill and the faint scent of gunpowder. Some believe he was one of the officers who led his men into the trap that day, doomed to relive his failure for eternity. Another frequently reported apparition is that of a young Confederate soldier who wanders near the creek, described as barely more than a boy. He appears wounded, his uniform torn and bloodstained, his eyes wide with confusion. Witnesses say he stumbles through the woods, calling out for his brother, repeating the same plea over and over. "Don't leave me. The sound fades into the distance, replaced by the rustling of leaves, though there is no wind. Even in daylight, the energy of the place is strange. Park rangers and visitors alike have noted that electronic devices often malfunction near certain parts of the battlefield. Cameras refuse to focus, batteries drain instantly, and recordings pick up faint background noises, rhythmic drumming, distant cries, or soft breathing. Some who have visited the site report headaches or sudden nausea that disappears as soon as they leave the area. Skeptics may dismiss these occurrences as coincidence, but those who've spent time at Pickett's Mill know better. The air there feels thick, heavy with memory and grief. There are accounts of entire ghostly regiments appearing in the mist. In 1998, a group of visitors walking near the historic mill site claimed they saw a line of soldiers crossing the trail ahead of them. The figures moved in silence, their uniforms glowing faintly in the moonlight. The group froze, believing they'd stumbled upon reenactors, but the soldiers disappeared mid-step, leaving behind only the faint scent of smoke. When the visitors returned the next morning, they found no footprints, no sign that anyone had been there. As night deepens, the battlefield takes on a dreamlike quality. The trees seem to shift in the darkness, their shapes bending and blurring. The sound of distant marching sometimes rises from nowhere, boots crunching leaves, accompanied by soft murmurs, and the metallic click of weapons being readied. Locals often say that Pickett's Mill is not a place of anger, but of sorrow. The men who fought and died here were young, frightened, and far from home. Many of them never received a proper burial, their remains lost to time and erosion. Some believe their spirits linger, not out of malice, but because they are still waiting for peace, for recognition, for someone to remember their sacrifice. Standing among the trees, the weight of history is palpable. The soil beneath your feet once ran red with blood, and the silence carries the unspoken grief of thousands. Whether or not you believe in ghosts, there is something undeniably haunting about the air at Pickett's Mill. The past is close here, close enough to feel, close enough to hear, in the whispers of the wind and the echo of phantom rifles that still crack across the ridges. For those who listen, the soldiers of Pickett's Mill are never truly gone. They are still there, forever guarding the ground they fought so hard to hold. Resaca Battlefield in Gordon County, Georgia, is a place where the calm of the countryside hides echoes of unimaginable chaos. Rolling hills and open fields now lie under a wide, peaceful sky. But beneath that serenity lingers the memory of one of the most violent encounters of the Civil War. In May of 1864, the Battle of Resaca erupted here as Union and Confederate armies clashed during General Sherman's advance toward Atlanta. For 2 long days, the hills thundered with cannon fire, musket volleys, and the screams of dying men. When it was over, more than 5,000 soldiers were dead or wounded. Many were hastily buried where they fell. To this day, visitors say the battlefield has never forgotten them, and neither have their spirits. Those who visit the Resaca Battlefield historic site often describe a strange heaviness in the air. The land seems to breathe with memory. On quiet mornings, the mist that settles over the fields feels almost alive, drifting like ghostly smoke from forgotten fires. Some say, if you stand still long enough, you can hear the faint beat of drums or the low rumble of cannon fire far in the distance, sounds that vanish as soon as you try to locate them. Others speak of a sudden chill, as though a cold wind passes directly through them, even when the air is still. Hikers exploring the wooded trails that crisscross the battlefield have reported encountering shadowy figures among the trees. They appear in flashes, a man in a tattered gray uniform, another in blue, their faces pale and empty, watching silently before fading into the forest. These apparitions are said to be most active at dawn and dusk, the times when the battle first began and when it finally ended. Visitors have described hearing footsteps following them through the woods, the soft crunch of leaves, or the rustle of fabric brushing against branches, but when they turn around, no one is there. One of the most chilling reports comes from the section of the park near Camp Creek Valley, where the fighting was at its fiercest. During the battle, hundreds of men were trapped and cut down as they tried to cross the creek under heavy fire. Locals say the valley has never been the same. People walking along the trail have heard splashing sounds in the water when it's perfectly calm, as though unseen figures are wading through it. Others have caught glimpses of ghostly soldiers standing knee-deep in the creek, their rifles clutched tightly, their expressions filled with confusion and pain. The figures vanish when approached, leaving only ripples spreading across the surface. Paranormal investigators, who have studied Resaca battlefield, claim the area is one of the most active Civil War sites in Georgia. During nighttime investigations, teams have captured recordings of disembodied voices, short breathless phrases like "hold the line," "move up," or "don't let go." Some have recorded the sound of musket fire and cannon blasts with no logical explanation. Electromagnetic sensors often spike near old trenches and burial mounds. And cold spots appear without warning, dropping the temperature by as much as 20 degrees in seconds. One investigator described feeling a sudden pressure on his shoulder, as though someone had grabbed him, followed by a whisper in his ear that said simply, "Stay down." Many locals believe the battlefield is still filled with the restless energy of soldiers who never found peace. The land around Resaca holds numerous unmarked graves, and while there is now a Confederate cemetery nearby, it's believed that many Union soldiers remain buried beneath the fields and hills. Their spirits, some say, are confused, still reliving their final desperate moments, unable to accept that the battle is long over. On certain nights, residents living near the site report hearing faint cries and shouts carried on the wind. The sounds rise and fall, like the tide, sometimes growing so clear that words can almost be distinguished: orders, pleas, and the moans of the wounded. Then, just as suddenly, they fade back into silence. There are also stories of campfire lights flickering in the distance when no one is there. Visitors walking near the edge of the forest have seen glowing orbs moving between the trees, shifting colors from blue to orange to white. These lights often appear in the same places where soldiers once set up camp before the battle. Some say they are the spirits of men still standing watch, tending fires that burned out over 160 years ago. A few witnesses have even claimed to smell gunpowder or smoke in the air, especially near the old earthworks that remain from the Confederate fortifications. One of the more unsettling encounters involves the sound of phantom gunfire that erupts without warning. Park rangers have received multiple reports from visitors who heard volleys of shots echoing across the hills when no reenactments or training exercises were scheduled. The sounds are described as distant yet powerful, as though coming from another time entirely. Sometimes they are accompanied by faint drumming or the metallic clash of bayonets. On windless days, the sounds seem to roll endlessly, wrapping around the hills before fading into the forest. Another recurring phenomenon is the sudden appearance of thick fog that rolls in from the valley without warning. Within it, some have seen indistinct human forms, soldiers walking in line, carrying rifles, their heads bowed. The fog moves slowly, clinging to the ground like smoke from cannon fire, and when it clears, the figures are gone. People who witness it often describe feeling overwhelmed with emotion, sadness, dread, or a strange empathy for the lost souls who once fought and died there. Even animals seem uneasy around the battlefield. Dogs brought to the site have been known to growl at empty spaces or refuse to walk certain paths, their fur standing on end. Birds will sometimes take flight all at once, as though startled by something unseen. Locals interpret these reactions as proof that the spirits of the fallen still linger, unseen but undeniably present. Visitors who come to Resaca often leave with a deep sense of reverence. The place feels sacred not just because of its historical significance, but because the energy there is unlike anywhere else. The whispers of the past seem to live in the air, caught between the rustling leaves and the distant hum of passing trains. Whether one believes in ghosts or not, there's no denying the feeling that the ground itself remembers. As night falls over the battlefield, the trees cast long shadows, and the temperature drops sharply. The world grows quiet, and the faint echoes of gunfire seem to return once more. Somewhere in the darkness, unseen soldiers still march through the forests, their shapes flickering at the edge of sight. Their cries drift across the empty fields, soft but haunting, as if the land refuses to let them fade. The Battle of Resaca may have ended long ago, but on nights when the wind is still and the moonlight spills across the hills, the dead seem to rise again, bound forever to the soil where they fought their restless spirits, keeping eternal watch over the silent fields of Gordon County. Atlanta's East Point battlefield in Fulton County carries with it an air of sorrow that never fully dissipated. Beneath the hum of modern life and the steady pulse of city traffic, a different rhythm lingers, the echoes of battle drums, the cry of commands long silenced, and the moans of the fallen. This area, once a fierce site of confrontation during the Civil War, holds stories that defy explanation and sightings that bridge the past and the present in chilling ways. Locals who walk the quiet streets after dusk often claim they are not walking alone. In 1864, East Point became a strategic location as Union and Confederate forces clashed during the Atlanta campaign. The dense forests and open farmlands were torn apart by cannon fire and musket volleys. The air filled with smoke and screams as thousands of men fought, many never to rise again. The earth beneath the roads still holds the remnants of that bloody summer, and some say the souls of those who perished still march through the shadows, bound to the ground where they fell. Residents near the old battlefield have spoken for decades of phantom soldiers seen moving along the old wagon paths that once led to fortified camps. At night, faint figures dressed in tattered gray or blue uniforms appear in the fog, only to fade into the darkness moments later. Some witnesses describe seeing a column of men walking in formation, their faces blank, their eyes fixed ahead, the sound of heavy boots striking the ground even though the street beneath them is paved and silent. Many accounts describe phantom artillery fire echoing through the still air in neighborhoods that now sit atop old battle lines. People have been awakened by the distant thunder of cannons, yet no storm follows. Some report windows rattling and dogs barking frantically as invisible volleys shake the ground. When they step outside, the night is calm, the air heavy with an unnatural chill. There are also reports of voices carried on the wind, faint but desperate. Some say they have heard men shouting orders, others whispering pleas for help. One longtime resident claimed that while walking near the edge of a wooded lot, she heard what sounded like groans of pain, the kind a wounded soldier might make when calling for a medic. When she turned toward the sound, the woods were still. Only the rustling of leaves and the low hum of distant traffic filled the silence. On quiet evenings, faint bugle calls are said to drift across the area, playing tunes that no living soul remembers. A former security guard at a nearby business park once described hearing taps echoing faintly across the fields. When he went to investigate, he found no one there, only a light mist hovering close to the ground. He said the sound faded slowly, as though it were moving away down a corridor of time itself. Some investigators have tried to capture evidence of the paranormal here. Photos have shown strange mists forming human-like shapes. Audio recordings have caught distant cries, rhythmic drumming, and whispers that repeat fragments of words. Advance, hold the line, help me. In one particularly chilling account, a team recorded what seemed to be the clash of bayonets, followed by a single gunshot and a fading scream. Local historians note that the area where East Point now thrives once saw waves of soldiers moving through under constant attack. Trenches still exist beneath the soil, hidden under layers of grass and pavement. It's as if those who fought here never left, trapped in a cycle of their final moments. Homeowners near these old sites often describe sudden cold spots inside their houses, as if someone unseen has walked past them. Others mention doors that creak open on windless nights, and the faint smell of gunpowder drifting through hallways. There are reports of ghostly sentinels standing guard near what used to be strategic hills. Late-night joggers have seen men in Confederate coats watching silently from the edge of wooded areas, only for the figures to vanish when approached. Some claim that, if you stand quietly enough in certain spots, you can hear marching footsteps approaching from behind. But when you turn, the path is empty. Even modern construction seems to stir the spirits. Workers who dig in old sections of East Point have reported finding relics, bullets, belt buckles, rusted bayonets. Some swear that after disturbing the soil, strange things begin to happen. Tools vanish. Footsteps echo through the site after hours, and faint shadows move across floodlights when no one is nearby. A particularly eerie story comes from a man who lived in a restored home near an old skirmish line. He awoke one night to the sound of pounding footsteps and shouts outside his window. Looking out, he saw figures running across his yard, soldiers in full uniform, one clutching his chest as if struck. They vanished before his eyes, but the trampled grass remained pressed down the next morning. Another witness, a delivery driver, reported that, as he passed through a quiet back road, his headlights caught what looked like a group of men crossing the street. They were faint, translucent, their outlines blurred by mist. They seemed unaware of him, their eyes locked on some unseen destination. He braked hard, heart pounding, but when he looked again, the road was empty. To this day, East Point Settlefield remains a place where history refuses to rest. Visitors who come seeking history often find themselves feeling uneasy, watched from the trees, or accompanied by a sudden, bone-deep chill. The sounds of war, faint, far, and otherworldly, drift through the modern landscape as if the echoes of 1864 still linger just beyond the veil. Dallas Satterfield in Paulding County, Georgia, is a site where history lingers, like a shadow cast over the rolling hills. Today, the area is quiet and green, dotted with trails, scattered trees, and open fields. But beneath that tranquility lies the memory of a brutal clash during the Atlanta campaign of the Civil War. On May 28, 1864, Union and Confederate forces collided here in fierce combat, leaving the earth scarred by artillery fire, trenches, and the footprints of soldiers who would never march again. For many who visit today, the past is not silent. It is alive, moving among the trees, echoing across the fields, and pressing down like an invisible weight. Those who explore the battlefield often speak of a strange, oppressive atmosphere. The air sometimes grows thick and heavy, and an unshakable sense of being watched descends as visitors walk along the trails. Even on warm, sunny days, cold drafts can suddenly sweep across the open fields, chilling the skin without warning. Many describe a feeling that the land itself is alive, holding on to the fear, sorrow, and desperation of the soldiers who once fought and died there. One of the most common reports involves ghostly figures appearing in the mist that drifts over the fields at dawn and dusk. Visitors have described seeing men in tattered gray and blue uniforms moving slowly across the open terrain. Their outlines sometimes blurred as if caught between this world and another. Some witnesses say the figures march in formation, while others describe scattered soldiers appearing to search for something, kneeling to tend the wounded, or falling to the ground as if struck. These apparitions are fleeting, often vanishing the moment they are closely observed, leaving the viewer with only a lingering sense of unease. Cavalry sightings are another frequent phenomenon. Shadowy riders are sometimes seen moving along the ridges, their horses appearing solid at first, then fading into the early morning fog. Observers often hear the distant clatter of hooves and the jingle of spurs, even when no trail is nearby. On several occasions, visitors claim to have felt the ground shake subtly beneath them, as if unseen mounts were passing just out of sight. Some believe these spectral cavalry units are reenacting charges from the battle, forever caught in the chaos of that fateful day. Phantom artillery fire is also commonly reported. Even on the quietest days, the sounds of distant cannons sometimes echo across the landscape. The booming is low and rolling, carrying over hills and through the trees, as if coming from multiple directions at once. Locals have reported that the echoes can be so vivid that it feels as though the earth itself is trembling. Sometimes, the cannon fire is accompanied by flashes of light in the distance. Not lightning, not vehicles, but brief, glowing bursts, like the discharge of unseen weapons. Witnesses say the sounds often start and stop abruptly, leaving a lingering tension in the air long after the last echo fades. Visitors also describe hearing the cries of wounded men drifting through the forest or across the open fields. The moans and calls are faint but unmistakable, carrying a weight of anguish that seems to press against the chest. Some report hearing soldiers shouting for medics, calling out names, or begging for help as they struggle to rise. Often, these sounds come and go without warning, disappearing when approached, leaving only silence in their wake. Many believe that the presence of the battlefield is strongest near the old earthworks and trenches. Here, the air reportedly grows colder, and the sense of unease intensifies. Hikers have described sudden headaches or dizziness, as though the lingering sorrow of the fallen weighs heavily on the mind. Even animals brought to the site seem aware of something unseen. Dogs may bark at empty spaces or refuse to move along certain paths, while birds take flight without apparent cause. Some of the most chilling experiences come from those who visit just before nightfall. The fading light casts long shadows across the terrain, and the mist thickens along low-lying areas. In this dim light, ghostly soldiers are said to appear more clearly, moving along ridge lines or across open fields. On rare occasions, entire formations have been reported, lines of men appearing briefly in the mist, rifles poised, marching silently in a pattern that no living person could maintain. The sight is said to be both mesmerizing and terrifying, as if the battlefield itself has come alive with the echoes of its past. There are also stories of personal encounters. A visitor once described pausing near a stand of trees when he noticed a figure slowly walking toward him. The man wore a worn uniform and carried a rifle, his face pale and expressionless. As he drew closer, the visitor felt an icy chill brush against his skin, and when he looked again, the figure had vanished completely, leaving the forest silent and still. Others report seeing small details, a glint of metal from a belt buckle, a flicker of a tattered flag, or the movement of hands gripping rifles that vanish upon closer inspection. Even in the modern day, Dallas battlefield retains a sense of its violent history. Park staff and locals alike describe areas where electronics fail, batteries drain quickly, or cameras produce strange anomalies. Some attribute these occurrences to the strong residual energy of the battlefield, left behind by the intensity of human emotion and death. Those who spend long periods walking the trails often leave feeling drained, haunted not by what they saw, but by what they felt, the oppressive presence of lives lost, and the history that refuses to fade. As night falls, the battlefield takes on a surreal quality. The fog thickens, drifting over the ridges and fields, and the world grows still. The distant sounds of hooves, marching boots, and gunfire sometimes return, faint and echoing, carrying across the darkened landscape. Ghostly figures appear and vanish among the trees, their faces pale, their eyes fixed on something unseen. The earth itself seems alive, heavy with memory, sorrow, and the weight of countless lost souls. Visitors who leave the battlefield often speak of a lingering unease, a sense that they have crossed a threshold into a world where the past has not yet released its hold. The ghosts of Dallas battlefield, both infantry and cavalry, remain bound to the land, their presence a silent testament to the ferocity of the conflict that once raged there. Even amid the modern bustle of Paulding County, the echoes of musket fire, cannon blasts, and marching soldiers continue to haunt the fields and ridges. A reminder that some memories never fade, and some battles are never truly over. Lovejoy Station, in Clayton County, Georgia, is a quiet, unassuming stretch of land today, marked by overgrown fields, remnants of old railbeds, and the occasional rusting fragment of history. Yet beneath the calm surface lies the memory of chaos and bloodshed. During the Atlanta Campaign of 1864, this area became the scene of repeated skirmishes between Union and Confederate forces, as both sides sought to control the vital rail lines that connected Atlanta to the rest of the South. The clashes were swift but deadly, leaving behind soldiers who never returned home. Locals and visitors alike have long claimed that these men never truly left, their spirits lingering, bound to the earth where they fought and fell. Those who wander the old railbeds today often report a peculiar stillness that settles over the landscape, a quiet that feels alive with hidden movement. On warmer days, the air can turn inexplicably cold, and a subtle weight presses against the chest as if unseen eyes are watching from the edges of the fields. Hikers and history enthusiasts have described the sensation of being followed, hearing footsteps crunch over gravel and underbrush only to find no one behind them. The feeling is subtle at first, a soft whisper of unease, but grows stronger the further one ventures into the open spaces where the battle once raged. Many encounters involve the ghostly echoes of musket fire. Visitors report hearing sharp cracks and distant volleys, sometimes paired with the faint smell of gunpowder hanging in the air. The sounds often start and stop abruptly, as if invisible soldiers are marching, stopping, and firing at unseen enemies. At times, the gunfire seems to circle around the listener, echoing across the open fields in a manner that no modern source could replicate. Some have even claimed to see flashes of light in the mist, brief, fiery bursts that appear as if musket shots are being fired from nowhere. Shadowy figures are among the most frequently reported phenomena. Walkers along the overgrown paths and railbeds have described fleeting glimpses of men in Civil War uniforms, moving purposefully across the fields or standing silently at the edge of the woods. Witnesses often describe a chilling sense of presence, a feeling that the soldiers are aware of them, even if they cannot be seen clearly. Along the old railbeds, visitors have reported hearing the creak of wagons, the clatter of equipment, and soft whispers that seem to come from all directions at once. Some claim to hear the faint, desperate calls of wounded soldiers pleading for aid, words carried lightly on the wind. These sounds vanish when approached, leaving nothing but the soft rustle of grass and the occasional cry of a distant bird. Locals often warn, if you hear a call for help, do not follow it too far into the fields. Those who do sometimes find the sense of dread intensifies, as though the battlefield itself resists intrusion. Paranormal investigators have found Lovejoy Station to be an active site. Temperature drops occur suddenly and without explanation, and electronic devices often malfunction near old embankments and earthworks. Audio recordings capture faint voices repeating short phrases like "hold the line" or "medic," while thermal cameras occasionally detect figures moving where no one is physically present. The most chilling reports come from those who spend extended periods on the property at night. They describe feeling a constant, weighty presence, as if the spirits of the fallen are watching, waiting, or reliving the moments of their final battle. The spirits are often described in relation to the geography of the battlefield. Figures appear near small rises that once offered cover, along embankments used for skirmishes, and on the open fields where the fighting was fiercest. Some witnesses report seeing soldiers kneeling or crouching as if aiming rifles, only for them to vanish when the observer moves closer. Others describe formations of men, moving in unison as though trapped in an endless drill, marching across the landscape silently and fading with the fog. In some of the darker accounts, people describe hearing phantom artillery, the low, rolling boom of distant cannons that vibrates through the ground and resonates in the chest. On nights with thick mist or low-hanging fog, the battlefield transforms, with silhouettes of men, horses, and equipment appearing briefly, then dissolving into the gray veil. Local residents have long told stories of encounters along the boundaries of Lovejoy Station. One account tells of a jogger who felt a sudden push from behind, turned and saw a ghostly figure in tattered uniform standing silently among the trees. Another describes a historian who paused near the old rail line to photograph a grove of trees, only to later find the image contained a faint, transparent figure standing among the branches, as if watching the camera. Others have reported seeing glowing orbs drifting above the ground, where soldiers once fell. Small lantern-like lights that move independently, often retreating when approached. Even in broad daylight, the battlefield's energy is palpable. Park visitors often feel an inexplicable tension, as if they are walking through invisible crowds. Animals brought to the area sometimes act skittishly, barking or refusing to move along certain paths. The land itself seems to hold memory, a persistent weight that bears down quietly, felt rather than seen. Many who have spent time here report leaving with a profound sense of reflection, the experience leaving them aware of the sacrifices made and the lingering unrest that occupies the fields. As evening descends over Lovejoy's Station, the landscape becomes almost otherworldly. The mist thickens along the railbeds, shadows grow long, and the air grows chillier. In these moments, the sounds of the past seem closest, The crack of muskets, the distant boom of artillery, the faint cries of the wounded, and the rhythmic tramp of boots moving unseen. Shadowy figures emerge along embankments and in the tree line, standing silently or drifting slowly across the fields. Those who walk here after dark often leave with the unmistakable impression that the soldiers of Lovejoy's station are still here, eternally bound to the land they defended, forever replaying the moments that ended their lives. Whether one believes in ghosts or sees these phenomena as echoes of history, Lovejoy Station remains a place where the past refuses to rest. Every footstep on the railbeds, every whisper carried on the wind, and every sudden chill serves as a reminder that the spirits of those who fought and fell here linger still watching over the fields forever, a part of the land that witnessed their courage and their suffering. Peachtree Creek in Fulton County, Georgia, winds quietly through suburban streets and wooded areas today, offering hikers and nature lovers a peaceful escape from the bustle of Atlanta. But beneath the calm surface and gentle currents of the creek lies a history soaked in blood and sorrow. On July 20th, 1864, the Battle of Peachtree Creek erupted as part of the Atlanta Campaign, one of the first major engagements after Confederate forces retreated from the city. Union and Confederate soldiers clashed with ferocity. Artillery boomed across the landscape, and musket fire tore through the smoke-filled air. Thousands were wounded or killed in the fields and along the banks of the creek, and many bodies were left where they fell. Locals and visitors have long reported that some of these souls never left the battlefield, that the creek itself holds their memory, replaying the horrors of that fateful day for anyone who ventures near. Hikers and explorers along Peachtree Creek have often described a sense of unease that appears without warning. On sunny afternoons, the air can suddenly feel icy, chilling the skin and sending shivers down the spine. Some visitors report the sensation of being watched, though no one else is in sight. Footsteps in the underbrush, faint rustling of leaves, or the creak of a branch sometimes accompany the feeling, but when turned toward, nothing can be found. The energy of the battlefield is palpable, a presence both invisible and undeniable, as if the land itself remembers the screams, fear, and chaos of the men who fought here. Spectral soldiers are among the most commonly reported phenomena along Peachtree Creek. Witnesses describe seeing translucent figures marching or moving across the water in fields, wearing tattered uniforms of gray and blue. Sometimes they appear standing in formation, rifles poised, the tension of battle frozen in their rigid posture. At other times, individuals are seen wandering alone, pausing as if searching for comrades or scanning for enemies that no longer exist. These figures often vanish suddenly when approached, dissolving into the mist or fading into the shadows along the creek bank. The sounds of battle, though impossible in the modern world, are frequently reported. Visitors have heard the sharp crack of musket fire, the rumble of distant cannons, and the thud of boots on soft ground. These sounds are rarely steady. They begin abruptly, roll across the landscape, and fade just as quickly, leaving only the echo of memory. Some hikers claim that the gunfire seems to circle them, coming from multiple directions at once, creating the disorienting sensation of being caught in the middle of the historic fight. Cries of the wounded are another eerie phenomenon. Even on quiet mornings or in the middle of the afternoon, witnesses have reported hearing the moans and pleas of soldiers who are clearly in pain, calling out for medics or for companions who have fallen. These sounds often carry over the creek or across open fields, sometimes so clearly that the words can almost be understood. Yet, when approached, the area is always empty. The cries fade into silence as mysteriously as they appear, leaving visitors unsettled and unsure of what they experienced. Cold spots and sudden drops in temperature are commonly reported along the banks of the creek and in the wooded areas nearby. Park rangers and hikers alike have described stepping into a clearing or near the water only to feel a sharp chill wash over them, their breath visible even in warm weather. Electronic devices brought into these areas often behave unpredictably. Cameras fail to focus, batteries drain rapidly, and recording equipment picks up static or faint voices that cannot be explained. Investigators attribute these phenomena to the residual energy left behind by the intensity of the battle and the concentrated suffering of those who died here. Some of the most striking encounters involve soldiers crossing the creek itself. Witnesses have described seeing figures wade through the water, rifles in hand, boots and pants soaked, moving with the deliberate purpose of men in combat. The spectral soldiers are often accompanied by other signs of battle, flashes of light in the mist resembling muzzle fire, the echo of orders shouted across the field, or faint, rhythmic sounds of marching boots. The apparition usually disappears after a few moments, leaving only ripples in the water or a lingering chill that hints at the presence of something beyond the living. Local folklore includes stories of entire battalions appearing in the mist during dawn or dusk. Lines of soldiers, almost transparent, march silently across the fields, their movements precise yet ghostly. Sometimes, these formations are accompanied by the distant boom of artillery. Other times, by the soft whisper of commands, repeated over and over. Those who have witnessed these sights describe them as both awe-inspiring and terrifying. A window into the past that reminds the living of the sacrifice and horror endured by the fallen. Even today, Peachtree Creek seems to resist complete calm. Wildlife often behaves unusually. Dogs growl at empty spaces. Birds flee suddenly, without warning. And the gentle lapping of the water can seem to echo the footsteps of unseen soldiers. Hikers report that certain areas of the creek feel heavier than others, as if the earth itself retains the memory of those who died there. The energy of the battlefield lingers in every tree line, across every field, and along every bend of the waterway. Visitors often leave the battlefield with a profound sense of reflection. Standing along Peachtree Creek, it is easy to imagine the terrified soldiers, the crack of musket fire, the smoke-filled air, and the cries of the wounded as they fought and fell along the banks. The ghosts of the past seem to linger here, not in anger, but in sorrow, bound to the land and the memories it holds. The creek continues to flow as it has for centuries, quietly carrying water through the fields. Yet beneath its calm surface, the echoes of battle never truly fade. On nights when the fog rolls in low and the air grows chill, the creek takes on an ethereal quality. Shadowy figures appear, gunfire and cries seem to rise from the mist, and sudden cold spots prick the skin. It is as though the battle itself is replaying, momentarily suspended in time, with the fallen soldiers walking, fighting, and calling for aid once more. For those who pause, listen, and walk quietly along the water's edge, Peachtree Creek is more than a creek. It is a living memorial, haunted and unforgotten, a place where history and the supernatural intertwine across the rolling hills of Fulton County. Ezra Church Woods in Atlanta, Georgia, is a quiet expanse of trees and trails that belies the violent history etched into its soil. During the Atlanta campaign of the Civil War, this area became a focal point for fierce combat. On July 28, 1864, Union and Confederate forces clashed in what would become known as the Battle of Ezra Church. The woods were alive with the thunder of artillery, the crack of rifles, and the cries of wounded soldiers. Thousands fought here, and many died in the shadowed trees, their bodies often left where they fell. Today, visitors report that the echoes of that battle linger in ways that defy explanation, as if the woods themselves are still haunted by the men who once fought there. Those who wander the trails of Ezra Church Woods often describe a palpable heaviness in the air. The atmosphere can shift suddenly from calm to oppressive, and hikers frequently report feeling watched, even when no one else is around. Footsteps and the rustle of leaves sometimes accompany this sensation. Yet when observers turn to look, the forest appears empty. The presence that people feel is subtle at first, a fleeting unease, but it can grow into something unmistakable as they move deeper into the wooded areas where soldiers once maneuvered and took cover. Shadowy figures are among the most commonly reported experiences. Witnesses describe fleeting glimpses of men in tattered Confederate gray or Union blue, moving purposefully through the trees. Some are seen marching in formation, rifles at the ready, while others appear alone, standing silently as if surveying the battlefield. These apparitions often disappear when approached, fading into the shadows or dissolving into the mist that frequently drifts among the trees. Visitors have described watching a figure vanish just as they drew near, leaving only the faint sound of footsteps or the impression that someone had passed through. Phantom bugle calls are another eerie occurrence at Ezra Church Woods. Even on days with no wind or other natural cause, hikers have heard the sharp, clear notes of a bugle carried across the trees. These sounds often appear to come from multiple directions, as if several units are calling commands at once. Some claim that the calls echo along old paths where troops once advanced, fading into silence just as suddenly as they began. The haunting quality of the music, sharp and lonely, has left many visitors describing a shiver down their spine, as though the voices of the past are speaking across time. Echoes of soldiers marching in formation are frequently reported in conjunction with the bugle calls. Observers say they hear the rhythmic thud of boots on soft earth or leaf-covered paths. The sound of men moving in unison, as if rehearsing a maneuver long after the battle ended. These sounds often seem to circle the listener, approaching and retreating unpredictably. Some witnesses describe a sense of awe mixed with dread, as if they are witnessing the past replaying itself, a moment frozen in the mists of time that only they can perceive. Mist and mysterious lights are common phenomena here as well. Thick fog often rolls through the woods in the late afternoon or early evening, settling low among the trees and trails. Within it, visitors sometimes see fleeting figures or glowing orbs that seem to move independently, drifting along the paths or among the branches. The lights vary in color, from soft white to pale blue, and some people have reported that they appear in places where no natural light source could exist. The combination of mist and light creates a surreal, almost dreamlike atmosphere, making it difficult to distinguish between reality and apparition. Sudden chills and cold spots are another recurring feature of the woods. Hikers have described feeling icy drafts that sweep across the trails even on warm days, sometimes accompanied by the unmistakable feeling of someone brushing past them. Electronic devices are known to malfunction in these areas, cameras failing to capture images properly, and audio equipment picking up static or faint whispers that cannot be explained. Investigators attribute these phenomena to residual energy from the intensity of battle and the concentrated sorrow of those who died here. There are also stories of personal encounters. One visitor recounted pausing on a narrow trail when he noticed a figure moving silently between the trees. The soldier wore a torn uniform and carried a rifle, his face pale and expressionless. As the observer watched, the figure moved closer, then abruptly vanished, leaving only the soft rustle of leaves. Another account describes a jogger hearing the faint but distinct sound of multiple soldiers marching along a ridge. When she looked up, the figures were gone, yet the sound seemed to linger in the air, echoing as if caught between past and present. Even in broad daylight, Ezra Church Woods exudes a sense of its violent past. The trees themselves appear to hold memory. The rustling of leaves often resembles whispered orders or distant cries. Animals behave strangely here, as well. Dogs may growl at empty spaces. Birds flee unexpectedly, and wildlife often appears unsettled. The combination of visual and auditory phenomena leaves visitors with an awareness that this is more than just a forest. It is a place steeped in history, tension, and the lingering presence of those who fell here. As night falls, the woods transform further. Mist thickens, shadows lengthen, and the temperature drops noticeably. Figures appear more clearly in the dim light. The sounds of marching and bugle calls return, and faint cries of wounded soldiers echo through the trees. The haunting is both subtle and profound, a reminder that the Battle of Ezra Church left marks that time cannot erase. Those who leave the woods often describe a lingering sense of awe and unease. The spectral soldiers, the phantom sounds of battle, and the mysterious lights serve as a living memorial to the men who fought and died here. Ezra Church Woods is not just a place to hike or explore. It is a corridor through history, where the past and present coexist, where the sacrifices and suffering of the fallen continue to resonate. for anyone who walks its paths quietly and respectfully. The woods offer a glimpse of a time long past, yet never truly gone, and a haunting experience that lingers long after leaving the trees behind. Jonesboro Woods, nestled near the quiet town of Jonesboro, Tennessee, is an area that seems unassuming to the casual visitor. Today, the forested landscape is serene, with winding trails, dense undergrowth, and the soft murmur of wildlife. Yet beneath this peaceful exterior lies the residue of a violent past. During the Civil War, the woods and surrounding fields were the site of numerous skirmishes between Union and Confederate forces. These clashes, though smaller than some of the larger campaigns, were no less deadly for those involved. Soldiers fell among the trees, their cries silenced by the chaos of battle, leaving their spirits tethered to the land. Locals and visitors have long claimed that the echoes of these conflicts linger here, manifesting in ways that defy explanation. Many who explore Jonesboro Woods report an overwhelming sense of presence. The atmosphere can shift suddenly, from quiet and calm to oppressive and heavy, as if the very air is aware of those who have walked its paths before. Hikers and history enthusiasts often describe the sensation of being watched, even when no one else is nearby. Soft footsteps in the underbrush, the crackle of broken branches, or the rustle of leaves sometimes accompany this feeling. When they turn to investigate, nothing is found, leaving only the lingering impression that unseen eyes are observing from the shadows. Shadowy figures are a common phenomenon reported here. Witnesses describe fleeting glimpses of men, dressed in torn and faded military uniforms, moving purposefully through the trees. Some appear alone, crouched as if taking aim with a rifle, while others move in groups, marching silently along old paths and trails. These figures often vanish suddenly when approached, dissolving into the foliage or mist, leaving observers questioning whether what they saw was real or imagined. On occasion, visitors have described seeing a soldier kneeling over a comrade, his hands moving as if tending to wounds, only to vanish moments later, leaving the ground undisturbed. Phantom musket fire is another frequent occurrence. Those who wander the woods have reported hearing sharp cracks, muffled volleys, and the low rumble of distant cannon fire. The sounds are erratic, starting and stopping without any discernible source, often giving the impression of soldiers engaged in a skirmish just beyond the tree line. Some witnesses claim that the gunfire seems to move around them, appearing to come from multiple directions at once, creating a disorienting experience that feels eerily authentic. The combination of visual and auditory phenomena has left many visitors shaken, unable to dismiss the events as mere coincidence. Whispers of planning and commands are also reported throughout the woods. Hikers have described faint voices, issuing orders or strategizing movements as though a command post were still active somewhere in the forest. Words such as advance, hold position, or flank left have been reported, though no human source is present. Some who have paused to listen claim that the voices can circle them, coming from different directions, as if invisible officers are communicating across the battlefield. Mist and sudden changes in temperature often accompany these phenomena. On warm afternoons, pockets of cold air can sweep across open clearings or along narrow trails, sending shivers down the spine. In the early morning or evening, a thin fog frequently settles among the trees, sometimes forming shapes that resemble marching soldiers or spectral outlines of men crouched behind fallen logs. These visual manifestations are fleeting but vivid enough to leave witnesses deeply unsettled. Even in the middle of the day, sunlight filtering through the trees can cast shadows that seem to move independently, enhancing the sensation of being observed. Personal encounters with the supernatural in Jonesboro Woods are numerous. One hiker described walking along a narrow trail when he noticed a soldier moving silently between the trees. The figure wore a faded uniform and carried a rifle, his face pale and expressionless. As the hiker watched, the soldier moved closer, then abruptly vanished, leaving only the faint rustling of leaves. Another visitor reported hearing the synchronized thud of boots behind him, as if a company of soldiers were marching. But when he turned, the path was empty, and the sound gradually faded into the distance. Even wildlife seems attuned to the lingering energy of the woods. Dogs may growl or refuse to enter certain areas. Birds flee unexpectedly, and small mammals can act skittishly without apparent cause. These subtle reactions reinforce the feeling that Jonesboro Woods is more than just a forest. It is a space where history has left an indelible mark, a land where the past continues to echo through the present. Investigators who have spent time in the woods have recorded unusual phenomena as well. Audio devices have captured faint voices and unexplainable sounds of marching and musket fire. Thermal cameras and night vision equipment occasionally detect figures moving between the trees, even when no one is physically present. Temperature drops are sudden and localized, often coinciding with the appearance of apparitions or the sounds of battle. All of these occurrences contribute to the perception that Jonesboro Woods is an active paranormal site, one that retains the energy of the men who fought and fell there. As night falls, the woods take on an even more surreal quality. Phantom soldiers are sometimes seen moving silently through the trees, accompanied by distant gunfire or the faint sound of marching boots. The whispers of commands continue, drifting through the forest and vanishing as quickly as they appear. Lights or glowing shapes are occasionally reported, floating just above the ground or drifting through the mist, their origin unknown. The experience is immersive and unsettling, a vivid reminder that the battle fought here left more than just a historical record. It left echoes of men and their struggles that linger across time. Visitors who leave Jonesboro Woods often report a mixture of awe and unease. The shadowy soldiers, phantom musket fire, and whispered commands serve as a living testament to the men who fought and died here. The woods are more than a collection of trees and trails. They are a corridor to the past, a place where the echoes of history and the presence of the fallen intertwine. For those who walk its paths quietly, with respect and attentiveness, Jonesboro Woods offers a haunting but poignant connection to a moment in history that refuses to fade, a reminder that some battles linger long after the guns have fallen silent. Marietta Battlefield in Cobb County, Georgia, is a place where the calm of the present masks the violence of the past. Today, the rolling fields and wooded areas are popular with hikers, history enthusiasts, and families seeking a quiet retreat from the nearby city of Marietta. But beneath the green grass and gently swaying trees lies a history of bloodshed and struggle. During the Atlanta campaign of the Civil War, Marietta became the site of intense fighting between Union and Confederate forces. Soldiers clashed across open fields, artillery roared, and musket fire tore through the air. Thousands of men were wounded or killed, and many fell in spots where their bodies were left behind. For generations, visitors have reported that some of these soldiers never truly left, their presence lingering in spectral form across the battlefield. Those who explore Marietta Battlefield often speak of an unsettling atmosphere. Even on bright, sunny days, a heaviness can settle over the fields and trails. Hikers report sudden cold spots that appear without warning, a chill that moves through the air as if following them. The sensation of being watched is also common, an invisible presence brushing against the mind or settling uneasily in the chest. Footsteps in the underbrush, the crackle of branches, or the rustling of leaves sometimes accompany these feelings. But when observers turn to investigate, the forest and fields are empty, leaving only a lingering sense that unseen eyes are observing. Shadowy figures are frequently reported on the battlefield. Witnesses describe soldiers moving through the trees and across the open ground, their outlines sometimes blurred, their movements purposeful and deliberate. Some appear marching in formation, rifles at the ready, as if replaying maneuvers from the battle. Others are seen moving alone, crouching or kneeling, tending to wounded comrades, or struggling under the weight of fallen soldiers. These figures often vanish when approached, fading into the mist or blending with the shadows of the trees. On occasion, witnesses have described seeing a soldier carry another across the field, the scene frozen in spectral form, only for the figures to disappear moments later, leaving the ground undisturbed. The sounds of battle are another commonly reported phenomenon. Even when the battlefield is quiet, visitors have heard the sharp crack of musket fire, the low rumble of distant cannon, and the rhythmic thud of marching boots. The sounds often begin and end abruptly, coming from different directions at once, creating the disorienting sensation of being caught in the middle of a phantom skirmish. The echoes are sometimes accompanied by the smell of gunpowder, a faint but unmistakable odor that seems to linger in certain areas long after the sounds fade. Witnesses say the combination of sound and smell is so vivid that it feels as though the battle has momentarily returned to life. Phantom artillery fire is also reported along ridgelines and open fields. Visitors have described hearing deep, rolling booms that vibrate through the ground, even when no live ammunition or construction is nearby. Some claim that the blasts are accompanied by flashes of light in the distance, fleeting glows that resemble the firing of cannons or rifles. These visual and auditory cues often coincide with the appearance of ghostly soldiers, enhancing the illusion that the battle is replaying itself in fragments for those present. Misty conditions and sudden shifts in weather are often linked to these encounters. Fog can settle over the fields in the early morning or late evening, moving through trees and along trails. Within the mist, ghostly figures are said to appear more clearly, outlines of men and horses taking shape, then dissolving into the haze. Cold spots often accompany these apparitions, making the temperature drop noticeably in isolated areas. Hikers and paranormal investigators alike report feeling sudden chills or a brush of unseen presence as the figures appear or vanish. Personal encounters are also part of the battlefield's lore. One visitor described pausing near a ridge when he saw a soldier moving silently through the trees, carrying a wounded comrade across open ground. The figure was pale and semi-transparent, yet detailed enough to recognize the uniform and the effort of the soldier's movements. As he watched, both figures vanished, leaving only the sense of weight and movement that lingered in the air. Others have reported hearing commands shouted, orders given, and the low murmurs of soldiers planning movements, though no living person is nearby. Wildlife often behaves unusually on the battlefield, reinforcing the feeling of unseen activity. Dogs may growl at empty spaces, birds suddenly take flight, and deer appear skittish or hesitant to cross certain areas. Even on quiet trails, the sounds of the woods themselves, rustling leaves, snapping twigs, distant bird calls, can feel amplified, as though reacting to something beyond ordinary perception. Investigators who have spent time at Marietta Battlefield report electronic disturbances and anomalies. Cameras and audio equipment often fail to function properly in certain areas. Batteries drain quickly, and recording devices sometimes pick up unexplained sounds, faint voices, marching steps, or the distant crash of musket fire. Thermal imaging occasionally detects figures moving where no one is physically present. Temperature drops are sudden and localized, often coinciding with apparitions or auditory phenomena. As night falls, the battlefield takes on a surreal, almost dreamlike quality. Mist drifts over the fields, shadows grow long, and ghostly figures appear more distinctly among the trees and ridges. The sounds of battle return, musket fire, cannon blasts, and the cries of the wounded echoing across the empty terrain. Shadowy soldiers are sometimes seen moving in formation, tending to the fallen, or vanishing suddenly as observers approach. The flicker of lights in the mist and the sudden drops in temperature create an otherworldly atmosphere, as if the echoes of the past have briefly crossed into the present. Visitors often leave Marietta Battlefield with a mix of awe and unease. The ghostly soldiers, phantom musket fire, cannon echoes, and spectral acts of bravery serve as a reminder of the lives lost and the intensity of the conflict that once consumed this land. The fields, ridges, and wooded areas are more than just history. They are a living testament to the past, where the presence of the fallen remains palpable. For those who walk the grounds quietly and respectfully, Marietta Battlefield offers a haunting yet profound connection to a moment in history that continues to resonate across time. Decatur Battlefield, located in DeKalb County, Georgia, is a quiet stretch of land today, dotted with grassy fields, scattered trees, and remnants of old paths that hint at its violent past. During the Civil War, this area was the scene of fierce clashes between Union and Confederate forces as both sides vied for control of the approaches to Atlanta. Soldiers fought with determination and desperation, many falling where they stood or were carried away, only to leave their bodies behind. Over the decades, locals have come to believe that the spirits of these men never fully left the land, and visitors to the battlefield often report experiences that defy natural explanation, suggesting that the echoes of conflict remain alive on this ground. Those who visit Decatur battlefield frequently speak of an unsettling atmosphere that permeates the area. Even on warm, sunny days, a sudden chill can sweep across the fields, a cold spot that seems to follow those who walk the old trails. Hikers often describe the sensation of being watched, a presence that lingers at the edge of vision or along the tree line. Footsteps in the underbrush, the rustle of leaves, or the faint crack of a twig sometimes accompany these feelings. Yet, when visitors turn to look, no one is there. The sense of unseen eyes observing is subtle at first but can grow into a deep, creeping unease as one ventures farther into the battlefield. Shadowy figures are a recurring phenomenon reported by those who explore Decatur battlefield. Witnesses describe fleeting glimpses of soldiers moving through the fields, their forms sometimes clearly human, other times more like smoke given shape. Some appear alone, standing silently as if watching over a specific section of land, while others march in formation, rifles at the ready, as though replaying the maneuvers of a long-past skirmish. These figures often vanish when approached, dissolving into the landscape or fading into the shadows of the trees. On occasion, visitors have reported seeing soldiers tending to wounded comrades or carrying them across the open field, only for the figures to vanish before the observer can reach them. Phantom gunfire is another commonly reported feature of the battlefield. Even on quiet, windless days, visitors have heard sharp cracks and muffled volleys, sometimes accompanied by the low rumble of distant cannon fire. The sounds often appear to come from multiple directions at once, creating the disorienting sensation of being caught in the middle of a phantom engagement. Some witnesses describe the sounds as circling them, approaching and retreating unpredictably, and leaving the impression that the battle is replaying itself in fragmented echoes. Along with the auditory phenomena, some have noted a faint smell of gunpowder that appears and disappears without explanation, lending the experience an eerie authenticity. Cold spots and sudden drops in temperature are another hallmark of Decatur battlefield's haunted reputation. Hikers and paranormal investigators alike report feeling icy drafts sweep across open fields or wooded paths, sometimes accompanied by the sensation of an invisible presence passing nearby. Electronic devices brought into these areas often behave unpredictably. Cameras fail to capture images properly, batteries drain rapidly, and audio recording equipment picks up static or faint whispers that cannot be attributed to any natural source. Many believe these phenomena are residual energy left behind by the intensity of the conflict and the concentrated suffering of the soldiers who fell here. Mist and fog add to the battlefield's spectral ambience, especially during early morning or late evening. Low-hanging fog often drifts through the fields and tree lines, and within it, visitors sometimes report seeing fleeting shapes or silhouettes of soldiers. Some figures appear solid enough to discern uniforms and rifles, while others are more ephemeral, dissolving into the mist before they can be fully observed. Lights, often described as pale orbs, occasionally appear drifting among the trees, their origin unknown, enhancing the sense that the land is alive with the presence of the past. Personal encounters on Decatur battlefield are numerous and chilling. One visitor described walking along a trail when he noticed a shadowy figure standing among the trees, holding a rifle and staring toward the open field. As he watched, the figure moved slowly across the grass, pausing occasionally as if observing the ground, and then vanished without a trace. Another account tells of a hiker who heard the sound of marching boots approaching from the distance. When she turned to see, the path was empty, yet the rhythm of the steps persisted for several seconds before fading into silence. These encounters, while brief, leave lasting impressions and a profound sense of the battlefield's lingering energy. Even wildlife seems attuned to the remnants of the battle. Dogs may growl at empty areas, birds take sudden flight, and deer appear hesitant to cross certain portions of the fields. These subtle reactions contribute to the feeling that Decatur battlefield is more than just a historical site. It is a space where the memory of the fallen continues to exert influence on the living environment. Investigators have documented a variety of paranormal phenomena here. Audio devices sometimes capture faint voices, repeated commands, or the distant sounds of musket fire and cannon blasts. Thermal imaging occasionally detects figures moving among the trees where no one is present. Temperature fluctuations are sudden and localized, often corresponding with sightings or auditory events. Together, these experiences suggest that Decatur battlefield remains a place where the past is not entirely gone, and the spirits of soldiers continue to linger, bound to the land where they fought and fell. As night descends, the battlefield takes on an ethereal quality. Shadows lengthen, the mist thickens, and the chill in the air becomes more pronounced. Shadowy figures are sometimes seen moving silently across the fields or standing at the edge of the trees, while phantom gunfire and distant cannon fire echo through the darkness. Whispered commands and the faint sounds of marching boots seem to drift through the trees, leaving visitors with the unmistakable impression that the battle is, in some form, still ongoing. Those who leave Decatur battlefield often do so with a mixture of awe and unease. The shadowy soldiers, phantom gunfire, cold spots, and whispering voices serve as a haunting reminder of the sacrifices and suffering endured here. The fields, trails, and trees are more than just history. They are a living memorial to a moment in time when lives were lost and courage was tested. For those who walk these grounds with respect and attentiveness, Decatur battlefield offers a connection to the past that is both poignant and unsettling. A place where the echoes of history refuse to fade. Noonan Skirmish Grounds in Coweta County, Georgia, may appear peaceful to the casual visitor, with its open fields, scattered trees, and winding trails, yet beneath its tranquil surface lies a history soaked in blood and turmoil. During the Civil War, this area was the site of several skirmishes between Union and Confederate forces. Soldiers clashed across open ground, firing muskets, maneuvering on horseback, and engaging in close combat that left many wounded or dead. Over the years, countless visitors and locals have come to believe that the restless spirits of those who perished remain tethered to the land, replaying fragments of the violence that occurred here in ghostly form. Many who explore the grounds report an immediate sense of unease. Even on warm, sunny days, the air can suddenly feel heavy, as if the energy of the past has seeped into the present. Hikers and history enthusiasts often speak of being watched, an invisible presence lingering along the edge of vision or just beyond the tree line. Rustling leaves, the snap of a branch, or the distant crackle of undergrowth sometimes accompanies this sensation, though no one is present. The feeling is subtle at first, but can grow intense as one ventures deeper into the battlefield, particularly in areas where the fighting was most concentrated. Ghostly figures on horseback are among the most frequently reported phenomena. Witnesses describe spectral cavalrymen riding silently across fields or along old trails, their horses' hooves making little or no sound. Some figures appear fully formed, dressed in tattered uniforms, rifles or sabers in hand, while others are faint silhouettes, fading in and out of view as they move. Occasionally, these ghostly riders are seen leading troops or appearing to scout the area, as if reliving the maneuvers of the skirmishes from decades past. Many observers describe the figures vanishing suddenly when approached, leaving only the sense of movement and a subtle, lingering chill in the air. Phantom musket fire is another common experience for visitors. Even on calm days with no wind, hikers report hearing sharp cracks and muffled volleys, often followed by the low rumble of distant cannon fire. These sounds frequently appear to move around the listener, giving the unsettling impression that skirmishes are occurring just beyond sight. Some witnesses describe the noises as circling them, alternating between different directions, creating the disorienting sensation of being caught in the middle of a long-past battle. At times, the gunfire is accompanied by the faint but unmistakable smell of gunpowder, an aroma that appears and disappears without any physical source. Whispers echoing through the trees are another frequently reported phenomenon at Noonan's skirmish grounds. Visitors have described hearing low voices issuing commands, giving orders, or communicating as though soldiers are coordinating maneuvers. Words like advance, hold position, or cover the flank are sometimes discernible. Yet no human voice can be traced. These whispers often drift through the treetops and across the open fields, sometimes circling around the listener, creating the impression of a phantom command post in operation. The voices can be both faint and distinct, clear enough to recognize, but elusive enough to provoke an eerie sense of unreality. Sudden, inexplicable chills are another hallmark of the area. Hikers frequently report experiencing icy drafts that sweep across open fields or wooded trails even during warm weather. These cold spots often coincide with sightings of ghostly figures or the sounds of battle, reinforcing the feeling that the presence of the past is active and perceptible. Electronic devices brought into the area sometimes behave erratically. Cameras fail to capture images. Audio recorders pick up static or faint voices, and batteries drain more quickly than expected. Many paranormal investigators attribute these anomalies to residual energy left by the intensity of conflict that occurred on the grounds. Misty conditions further enhance the haunted atmosphere. Early morning or late evening fog often drifts across the fields, weaving between trees and settling along low trails. Within the mist, visitors have reported seeing faint shapes of soldiers or riders on horseback moving silently, only to disappear moments later. Occasionally, floating lights are seen drifting among the trees or over the fields, their origin unknown, adding to the otherworldly ambience of the battlefield. Personal encounters add depth to the legends surrounding the grounds. One visitor recounted standing on an open trail when she saw a cavalryman riding slowly across the field, his uniform faded, rifle at the ready. As she watched, he paused, scanned the area, and then vanished into thin air. Another reported hearing the steady rhythm of marching boots behind him. When he turned to look, the path was empty, yet the sound lingered for several seconds before fading. These moments, while brief, often leave visitors with a profound sense of connection to the past and the lingering presence of those who fought and fell here. Wildlife in the area sometimes behaves strangely, further adding to the feeling of otherworldliness. Dogs may growl at seemingly empty spaces. Birds scatter unexpectedly, and deer hesitate to cross certain portions of the fields. These subtle reactions lend weight to the idea that Noonan's skirmish grounds is a space where history remains alive, a place where echoes of the past continue to manifest in both subtle and vivid ways. As night falls, the battlefield takes on an even more spectral quality. Shadows stretch across the fields, the mist thickens, and the temperature drops noticeably. Ghostly figures are often seen moving through the trees or across open grounds, accompanied by the distant sounds of musket fire, cavalry movement, or the muffled cries of wounded soldiers. Whispered commands drift through the woods, and lights or orbs float among the trees, creating a surreal, almost dreamlike environment. The battlefield becomes a stage where the events of long ago briefly replay themselves, a haunting tableau visible only to those present at the right moment. Visitors who leave Noonan's skirmish grounds often describe a mixture of awe and unease. The ghostly riders, phantom musket fire, whispered commands, and sudden chills serve as a reminder that this was a place of courage, fear, and loss. The fields, trees, and trails are more than historical markers. They are living echoes of a time when the ground was soaked with the struggle of men on both sides of the conflict. For those who walk quietly and attentively, Noonan's skirmish grounds offers a haunting glimpse into history, a place where the spirits of the fallen linger long after the battle has ended. Lovejoy Creek, situated in Clayton County, Georgia, is a place of quiet beauty today, with its gently flowing waters, surrounding fields, and shaded forested areas. Yet beneath its serene surface lies a turbulent history. During the Civil War, the area surrounding Lovejoy Creek was the site of fierce clashes as Confederate and Union forces fought for control of the strategic approaches to Atlanta. Soldiers charged across the fields, Volleys of musket fire echoed through the woods, and artillery roared from distant positions. Many who fought here fell where they stood, their bodies often left among the trees and creek banks. Over the years, locals and visitors have come to believe that the spirits of these men linger still, their presence occasionally manifesting in eerie and inexplicable ways. Visitors to Lovejoy Creek frequently speak of an unusual atmosphere, one that seems charged with the weight of past violence. Even on warm, sunny days, a sudden chill can sweep across the fields, a cold spot that appears with no natural cause. Hikers often report feeling watched, as if unseen eyes follow their every movement. Footsteps crunch along the forest floor, leaves rustle in places where no one is present, and the soft murmur of water can seem interrupted by sounds of struggle. This sensation of an invisible presence is subtle at first, but can grow into a profound unease as one moves deeper into areas that were once the heart of conflict. Shadowy figures are among the most commonly reported phenomena at Lovejoy Creek. Witnesses describe fleeting glimpses of men in faded uniforms moving through the woods or across open fields. Some appear to be marching in formation, rifles at the ready, while others move alone, crouching or tending to the wounded. These figures often disappear when approached, fading into the trees, the mist, or the shadows. Some visitors have reported seeing soldiers carrying fallen comrades along the creek banks, their forms ghostly but detailed enough to recognize the strain of their movements. Moments later, the figures vanish entirely, leaving only a sense of passage and weight lingering in the air. Phantom footsteps are another frequent occurrence. Hikers have reported hearing the sound of boots on earth and leaves, moving rhythmically along paths or through the underbrush. These sounds often seem to circle the observer, sometimes approaching and then retreating, as if soldiers are maneuvering in formations from long ago. Even when the terrain is empty and quiet, the footsteps persist, leaving visitors with the sense that they are walking among invisible participants in a historic battle. The effect is both unnerving and strangely immersive, as if the past has briefly crossed into the present. Disembodied cries are another haunting phenomenon. Observers frequently hear the muffled voices of men shouting orders, calling to comrades, or crying out in pain. These sounds rise and fall with the wind, drifting across fields and through trees, sometimes seeming close enough to touch, and other times distant and echoing. Witnesses often report a shiver running down their spine as the cries echo around them, a reminder that the land was once soaked with fear, bravery, and suffering. The cries may persist only for moments or last long enough to feel like a ghostly chorus from a battle frozen in time. Misty conditions often enhance these experiences. Early mornings and late evenings bring low-lying fog that drifts along the creek and into the wooded areas. Within the mist, visitors sometimes report seeing fleeting-shaped soldiers moving silently through the trees, or figures crouched behind logs and bushes. At times, faint lights or orbs are observed floating just above the ground or drifting between trees. Their origin mysterious and unexplained. These apparitions, combined with the natural fog, give the area an otherworldly quality, making it difficult to distinguish between reality and the lingering echoes of history. Personal encounters are not uncommon. One visitor described walking along a narrow trail when he noticed a shadowy figure emerge from the trees. Carrying a wounded comrade across the creek's edge, the figures moved silently, appearing as pale silhouettes against a misty background, before disappearing entirely, leaving the visitor frozen in awe and disbelief. Another recounted hearing the rhythmic sound of marching boots behind her on a wooded path. When she turned, the area was empty, yet the sounds lingered, fading only after several seconds. These moments, brief yet intense, often leave lasting impressions on those who experience them. Wildlife seems unusually attuned to the presence that lingers at Lovejoy Creek. Dogs may growl or refuse to enter certain areas. Birds take sudden flight without warning, and deer appear hesitant or skittish, avoiding patches of the woods entirely. These subtle reactions reinforce the feeling that the battlefield is not merely a site of past human activity, but a space where the echoes of history continue to interact with the present environment. Paranormal investigators have also documented strange phenomena here. Audio devices have recorded faint whispers, commands, and the distant sound of musket fire. Cameras and thermal imaging sometimes detect shapes moving through trees where no one is present. Temperature drops are sudden and localized, often coinciding with sightings or sounds, creating the impression that the past is momentarily pressing against the present. Some visitors have also reported electronics malfunctioning inexplicably, from cameras failing to capture images to flashlights dimming without reason. As dusk falls, the haunting presence seems to intensify. Mist thickens along the creek, shadows grow long, and cold spots become more pronounced. Ghostly figures are sometimes seen moving silently among the trees or along the creek banks. Phantom footsteps and cries echo across the fields, drifting unpredictably through the woods. Faint lights may appear, floating near the ground or weaving through the trees, adding to the surreal, almost dreamlike quality of the area. The battlefield becomes a place where history and the supernatural converge, and the events of long ago briefly replayed themselves for those present at the right moment. Visitors leaving Lovejoy Creek often describe a mix of reverence and unease. The shadowy figures, phantom footsteps, and disembodied cries serve as haunting reminders of the sacrifices made on this land. The fields, trees, and waters are more than just a scenic retreat. They are a living testament to a moment in history, a place where the courage, fear, and suffering of soldiers continue to echo through time. For those who walk its paths with respect and attentiveness, Lovejoy Creek offers a haunting, immersive connection to the past. A battlefield where the spirits of the fallen have yet to find peace. Allatoona Lake Battlefield, nestled in Bartow County, Georgia, is a place where the calm beauty of water and forest contrasts sharply with its violent past. Today, the lake's shimmering surface, rolling hills, and wooded shorelines attract visitors for recreation and sightseeing. Yet beneath this serene exterior lies a history soaked in blood. During the Civil War, this area was a strategic point during the Battle of Allatoona, where Confederate and Union forces clashed in a brutal contest for control of vital supply lines. Soldiers fought fiercely along the ridges and shoreline. Artillery roared, and many men fell, leaving a mark on the land that locals believe lingers to this day. Visitors to the battlefield often speak of an eerie, unsettling atmosphere. Even on bright, warm days, sudden chills sweep across the trails and open fields, seemingly coming from nowhere. Hikers frequently report a sensation of being watched, as if unseen eyes track their every movement. Footsteps in the underbrush, rustling leaves, or the faint creak of old trees can accompany this sense of presence, even when no living creature is visible. These subtle signs often escalate into more pronounced experiences, leaving visitors feeling as though the past has stepped forward into the present. Shadowy figures are a common phenomenon at Allatoona Lake Battlefield. Witnesses describe ghostly soldiers marching in formation along the shoreline or moving through wooded areas. Some figures appear clearly human, with faded uniforms and rifles in hand, while others are more ethereal, fading in and out of view like smoke. Occasionally, the figures are seen carrying wounded comrades across open ground or kneeling beside fallen soldiers, replaying moments of history that have been etched into the landscape. These apparitions often vanish when approached, dissolving into the mist or blending with the shadows, leaving only the impression of movement and the weight of unseen presence. Phantom artillery fire is another frequently reported occurrence. Visitors describe the low rumble of distant cannon, sometimes accompanied by flashes of light over the ridges or across the water. The sounds often seem to come from multiple directions at once, creating the disorienting feeling of being in the midst of a battle that has long since ended. In some instances, the gunfire appears to circle observers, approaching and receding unpredictably, lending an uncanny realism to the experience. Some have even claimed to smell the faint, lingering scent of gunpowder as the phantom artillery echoes through the air. Spectral flags are another element of Allatoona Lake Battlefield's haunting reputation. Hikers have reported seeing flags waving along the shoreline, their colors muted but distinct, fluttering as though caught in a breeze that does not exist. These ghostly standards are sometimes accompanied by the appearance of marching soldiers or the sounds of distant commands being shouted across the battlefield. Witnesses often describe the sight as both awe-inspiring and unsettling, a fleeting vision of history replaying itself in a spectral form. Cold spots and sudden shifts in temperature are a hallmark of paranormal activity here. Hikers frequently experience icy drafts along the shoreline or under the trees, sometimes in the middle of warm days. These chills often coincide with sightings of ghostly figures or the distant echoes of battle, reinforcing the sense that the energy of the past is palpable. Many visitors also report a feeling of heaviness in the air, a subtle pressure that seems to weigh down on them as they traverse certain areas of the battlefield. Mist and fog frequently enhance the haunted atmosphere. In early morning or late evening, low-hanging fog drifts over the water and along the wooded trails, weaving through the trees and settling into open fields. Within the mist, figures are sometimes observed moving silently along the shoreline or across ridges. Some apparitions appear as fully formed soldiers, while others are faint outlines, barely discernible against the fog. Occasional orbs of light float among the trees or above the water, adding to the otherworldly ambience and reinforcing the sense that the battlefield is alive with remnants of the past. Personal encounters are common at Allatoona Lake Battlefield. One visitor described standing near the water's edge when a group of ghostly soldiers appeared, marching in perfect formation along the shoreline. The figures paused briefly, as if observing the observer, then continued their march before disappearing into the trees. Another recounted hearing the rhythmic thud of boots approaching from the ridges, followed by phantom gunfire. When he turned, the area was empty, yet the sounds persisted for several seconds, fading gradually into silence. Such experiences leave visitors with a lasting impression of the battlefield's lingering presence and the echoes of the men who fought and died there. Wildlife often reacts strangely in areas where apparitions are seen. Dogs may growl at seemingly empty spaces, birds scatter suddenly, and deer appear hesitant to cross certain parts of the terrain. These subtle interactions contribute to the impression that the battlefield is not just a historical site, but a place where echoes of past life continue to manifest in both small and profound ways. Paranormal investigators have documented a range of phenomena at Allatoona Lake Battlefield. Audio recorders capture faint voices, commands, and distant musket fire. Thermal imaging occasionally detects movement among the trees or along ridges where no human presence exists. Temperature drops are often sudden and localized, coinciding with sightings or auditory experiences. Electronic equipment sometimes malfunctions without explanation, from cameras failing to capture images to flashlights dimming unexpectedly. All of these occurrences suggest that the battlefield retains energy from the conflict, energy that manifests in ways that are tangible and unsettling for those who encounter it. As night falls, Allatoona Lake Battlefield takes on a haunting, surreal quality. Mist rises from the water, shadows lengthen across the fields, and cold spots become more pronounced. Shadowy figures move silently along the shoreline or through the trees. Phantom artillery fire echoes across the ridges, and ghostly flags sometimes appear, fluttering in the unseen breeze. Disembodied commands, footsteps, and distant cries add to the ethereal ambience, making the battlefield feel as though the past has briefly returned, replaying itself for those present to witness. Visitors leaving Allatoona Lake Battlefield often describe a mixture of awe and unease. The ghostly soldiers, phantom artillery, spectral flags, and sudden chills serve as a reminder of the courage, fear, and sacrifice that occurred here. The fields, ridges, and shoreline are more than scenic vistas. They are a living memorial, a space where the echoes of history continue to resonate. For those who walk the grounds attentively and respectfully, Allatoona Lake Battlefield offers a haunting, immersive connection to the past, a place where the spirits of the fallen linger and the battle's memory refuses to fade. Resaca Woods, in Gordon County, Georgia, is a place where dense trees and quiet trails conceal a history of intense conflict. During the Civil War, This forested area was the site of fierce fighting as Union and Confederate forces clashed in the Battle of Resaca. Soldiers maneuvered through the woods, musket fire rang out, and artillery boomed, leaving countless men wounded or dead. Over the decades, locals and visitors have reported that the echoes of these battles have not entirely faded, with ghostly figures and unexplained phenomena appearing amid the trees, giving the forest a reputation as a haunted and restless place. Visitors to Resaca Woods often describe an immediate sense of unease, a feeling that the forest is alive with invisible eyes. Even on sunny days, cold spots can sweep across the trails without warning, and a subtle pressure seems to weigh down on hikers as they move deeper into the woods. Rustling leaves, snapping branches, and distant creaks sometimes accompany these sensations. But when observers turn to look, the forest is empty. These subtle disturbances often escalate into more pronounced experiences, leaving visitors with the impression that the spirits of soldiers still linger among the trees. Shadowy figures are among the most frequently reported phenomena in Resaca Woods. Witnesses describe ghostly soldiers moving silently between trees, sometimes marching in formation, rifles held at the ready. Other apparitions appear alone, crouched in the underbrush, tending to fallen comrades, or scanning the terrain as if preparing for battle. These figures often vanish when approached, dissolving into the shadows or fading into the mist that occasionally drifts through the forest. Some visitors have reported seeing soldiers carrying wounded comrades through the trees, only to disappear moments later, leaving no trace but a lingering sense of presence. Phantom gunfire is a common experience in the woods. Hikers and history enthusiasts have described the sharp crack of musket shots and the low rumble of distant cannon fire, sometimes appearing to come from multiple directions at once. The sounds can circle the observer, approaching and receding in ways that create the sensation of being caught in the middle of a long-past battle. Occasionally, these auditory phenomena are accompanied by the faint smell of gunpowder, giving the experience a startling realism that can leave witnesses disoriented and uneasy. Whispers of commands drifting through the trees add another layer to the haunting atmosphere. Visitors report hearing soldiers shouting orders, planning maneuvers, or calling to one another, though no living voice is present. Commands like hold the line, advance, or cover the flank seem to emanate from the forest itself, drifting through the undergrowth and across the trails. These whispered voices often ebb and flow with the wind, creating a surreal experience in which the woods seem to replay the battle, with invisible soldiers coordinating movements as if time itself has folded. Misty conditions and low-hanging fog are often linked to sightings in Resaca Woods. Early morning or late evening fog can drift through the trees, settling over trails and small clearings. Within this mist, figures are sometimes seen moving silently, soldiers pausing briefly before vanishing, their forms blending with the fog. Faint lights or orbs occasionally float between the trees, adding to the otherworldly quality of the forest. Observers often report that these apparitions appear more vivid in misty conditions, as if the battlefield's energy is more easily perceived when the air is thick and still. Personal encounters in the woods are frequently reported. One hiker described walking along a narrow path when he saw a shadowy soldier emerge from between two trees, rifle in hand, moving slowly across a clearing before disappearing into the forest. Another visitor recounted hearing the steady rhythm of marching boots behind her, only to turn and find the trail empty. These fleeting, yet intense experiences leave a lasting impression, reinforcing the sense that Resaca Woods is a place where the past persists in subtle and sometimes startling ways. Wildlife often behaves unusually in areas where apparitions are reported. Dogs may growl at unseen presences, birds take sudden flight, and deer hesitate to cross certain sections of the woods. These reactions contribute to the impression that the forest is more than a natural environment. It is a place where echoes of human conflict continue to influence the present, a living reminder of history that refuses to be forgotten. Paranormal investigators have documented a range of unusual phenomena in Resaca Woods. Audio recorders have picked up faint commands, distant musket fire, and the sound of marching boots. Cameras and thermal imaging sometimes detect figures moving between the trees where no one is present. Temperature drops are sudden and localized, often coinciding with sightings or auditory events. Electronic devices occasionally malfunction, from cameras failing to capture images to flashlights dimming inexplicably, adding to the sense that the battlefield's energy continues to manifest in tangible ways. As dusk falls, Resaca Woods becomes even more surreal. Shadows stretch long across the trails, fog drifts among the trees, and cold spots grow more pronounced. Ghostly soldiers appear moving silently through the forest, sometimes marching in formation, sometimes tending to unseen wounded. Phantom gunfire and the whispers of commands fill the air, drifting unpredictably among the trees. Faint lights occasionally flicker between trunks or float above the ground, creating an ethereal, dreamlike atmosphere. For those present, the forest feels alive with history, a place where the past briefly intersects with the present. Visitors leaving Resaca Woods often describe a mixture of awe and unease. The shadowy soldiers, phantom gunfire, and whispered commands serve as haunting reminders of the bravery, fear, and suffering that occurred here. The forest, trails, and clearings are more than natural scenery. They are living echoes of a battle that changed the course of history. For those who walk these paths attentively and respectfully, Resaca Woods offers a deeply immersive connection to the past, a place where the spirits of the fallen linger, and the battlefield itself seems to breathe with memory. Kennesaw Mountain Ridge in Cobb County, Georgia, stands today as a scenic destination for hikers, history enthusiasts, and nature lovers. Its ridges rise prominently above the surrounding landscape, offering expansive views of forests, valleys, and trails that wind through areas steeped in Civil War history. Yet beneath the beauty of the mountain lies a turbulent past. During the Atlanta campaign of the Civil War, Kennesaw Mountain was the site of intense and deadly conflict. Confederate and Union soldiers clashed across these ridges, exchanging rifle fire and maneuvering for control of strategic positions. Many fell on these slopes, and over the years, reports have persisted of ghostly remnants of the battle, making Kennesaw Mountain Ridge one of Georgia's most haunted historical sites. Visitors to the ridge often report an unsettling sensation almost immediately upon entering the area. Even on clear, sunny days, hikers describe sudden cold drafts that sweep across the trail or open ridges with no apparent source. This inexplicable chill seems to follow them at times, passing over the skin and leaving a lingering sense of unease. Some have said it feels as if the air itself is thick with unseen presence, as though the ridge is still charged with the energy of the men who fought and died there. Phantom soldiers are among the most frequently reported phenomena. Witnesses describe fleeting figures moving along the ridges, sometimes marching in formation, sometimes appearing alone, crouched among trees or over rocks. These soldiers are often dressed in the faded uniforms of the Union or Confederate armies, rifles held at the ready. Some observers have described seeing men kneeling beside invisible comrades or carrying the wounded across uneven ground. These figures tend to vanish when approached, dissolving into the landscape or fading into the mist that often lingers on the mountain, leaving only the impression that they were ever there. Ghostly rifle fire is another common experience on Kennesaw Mountain Ridge. Even on quiet, windless days, visitors have reported hearing sharp cracks and muffled volleys echoing from ridge to ridge. The sounds sometimes appear to move unpredictably, coming from different directions, as if a battle is replaying itself in fragments. Occasionally, the auditory phenomena are accompanied by faint wisps of smoke or the smell of gunpowder, lending the experience an eerie realism that can be both awe-inspiring and unnerving. Many hikers have remarked on the way the sounds seem to interact with the natural acoustics of the ridges, giving the impression that the battlefield is momentarily alive once more. Another haunting feature of Kennesaw Mountain Ridge is the faint echo of marching feet. Visitors frequently report hearing rhythmic footsteps approaching through the trees or across open fields, only to vanish when the sound grows close. The echo of boots on rocky terrain, the muted clatter of rifles, or the distant call of an officer's voice creates the impression of a ghostly unit moving in formation, unseen but audibly present. Some have described the phenomenon as circular, with the footsteps seemingly moving around them, reinforcing the sensation that they are surrounded by the past. Misty mornings and reliving fog often enhance these supernatural experiences. Low-lying mist drifts along the ridges, flowing through trees and settling over open paths. Within this fog, figures are sometimes seen, moving silently, their forms appearing and disappearing as they navigate the slopes. Ghostly lights occasionally flicker between the trees or hover near the crest of the ridges, adding to the surreal, almost dreamlike quality of the environment. The combination of mist, shadows, and the natural contour of the ridges creates a setting where the boundary between history and the present feels thin and permeable. Personal encounters are numerous and chilling. One visitor described hiking along a ridge when a figure appeared at the edge of a clearing, rifle slung over the shoulder, watching him silently before vanishing. Another recounted hearing the distinct crunch of boots on dry leaves behind her, growing closer with each step, only to find no one present when she turned. Others have reported seeing soldiers carrying wounded comrades across open slopes, only for the vision to dissolve when approached. These experiences often leave an indelible impression, instilling both awe and a deep sense of respect for the men who fought here. Wildlife at Kennesaw Mountain Ridge sometimes reacts unusually in areas of reported activity. Dogs may growl at seemingly empty spaces, birds scatter suddenly, and deer hesitate to cross certain trails or ridges. These subtle reactions reinforce the idea that the ridge is not merely a natural landscape, but a place imbued with lingering energy from the past. Observers often feel that they are not alone, that the mountain itself bears witness to the sacrifices of long-gone soldiers. Paranormal investigators have documented a variety of unusual phenomena here. Audio recordings occasionally capture faint voices, distant commands, or the echo of musket fire. Sudden temperature drops, localized cold spots, and erratic behavior of electronic devices, cameras failing to capture images. Flashlights dimming unexpectedly have all been reported. These anomalies lend credence to the idea that Kennesaw Mountain Ridge is a site where the energy of past battles continues to manifest in tangible ways. As dusk falls, the ridge takes on an ethereal, haunting quality. Shadows stretch across the slopes, mist drifts through the trees, and the temperature drops noticeably. Phantom soldiers may be glimpsed moving along the ridges or through the wooded areas. Rifle fire echoes in the distance, and marching footsteps can be faintly heard across open ground. Occasionally, ghostly lights flicker near the crest or float among the trees, creating a surreal tableau of a battlefield partially returned to the present. For those standing on the ridge at these moments, the past and present feel intertwined, and the courage, fear, and sacrifice of the soldiers seem almost tangible. Visitors leaving Kennesaw Mountain Ridge often describe a mix of awe and unease. The phantom soldiers, ghostly rifle fire, marching echoes, and sudden chills serve as haunting reminders of the events that unfolded on these slopes. The ridges, trails, and wooded areas are more than scenic vistas. They are living memorials where the echoes of history remain vivid. For those who walk attentively and respectfully, Kennesaw Mountain Ridge offers a profound connection to the past, a place where the spirits of the fallen continue to linger, and the battlefield itself seems alive with memory. Marietta Cemetery Fields in Cobb County, Georgia, is a place where history and the supernatural converge. Today, the rolling fields and tree-lined paths appear peaceful, a quiet resting place for the fallen. But beneath this serene landscape lies a violent past. During the Civil War, this area became a crucial site for skirmishes and engagements as Union and Confederate forces battled for control of the region. Soldiers charged across the fields, musket and rifle fire cracked through the air, and artillery boomed in the distance. Many men lost their lives on these grounds, leaving a history marked by struggle, sacrifice, and death. Over time, visitors and locals have come to believe that the spirits of those who fell here have not fully departed. With shadowy figures, phantom cries, and other strange phenomena reported regularly, Those who venture into Marietta cemetery fields often describe a heavy atmosphere as they walk the grounds. Even on calm days, a sudden chill can sweep over the fields, leaving hikers shivering despite the warmth of the sun. Some report an almost tangible feeling of being watched, a subtle pressure that seems to follow them as they move through the fog or along the open paths. Rustling leaves, snapping twigs, and the faint creak of old trees sometimes accompany these sensations. Yet when observers turn to look, no living creature is in sight. It is as if the battlefield itself retains the memory of those who once fought and died here, a presence that can be felt by anyone attuned to the area's energy. Shadowy figures are among the most frequently reported phenomena at Marietta cemetery fields. Witnesses describe soldiers emerging from the morning fog or drifting along the edges of the trees. Some appear in faded Confederate or Union uniforms, rifles at the ready, marching in formation or moving alone as they navigate the terrain. At times, observers have seen soldiers kneeling over unseen comrades, tending to the wounded, or carrying them across the field before vanishing entirely. These figures often dissolve into the fog or blend into the shadows, leaving only a sense of motion and presence. Their appearances are fleeting but leave a lasting impression, as though the past has momentarily stepped into the present. Phantom cries and voices are another hallmark of the area. Visitors frequently report hearing the muffled shouts of men giving orders, calling to one another, or crying out in pain. These sounds often rise and fade with the wind, drifting across the open fields and through the tree lines. Some witnesses claim to hear soldiers calling names, shouting for medics, or giving commands to hold the line. The voices appear both near and far, sometimes creating the disorienting impression of a battle unfolding around the listener. Even though the land is quiet and empty, faint flashes of cannon fire are also reported, adding to the battlefield's eerie reputation. Even on sunny, windless days, witnesses have described brief glimmers of light along the horizon, accompanied by the distant roar of artillery. These flashes often appear suddenly and vanish just as quickly, leaving visitors questioning whether they witnessed a trick of the light or a genuine remnant of the past. Many who have seen these flashes also report hearing the low rumble of cannon fire or the crack of rifles shortly afterward, reinforcing the sensation that the spirits of battle are active on these grounds. Mist and fog enhance the haunting atmosphere of Marietta cemetery fields. Early morning and late evening often bring low-lying fog that drifts over the fields and between the trees. Within this mist, figures are sometimes glimpsed, moving silently, soldiers appearing and disappearing as if caught between this world and the next. Ghostly lights occasionally float above the grass or weave through the tree line, creating an ethereal, almost dreamlike scene. The combination of fog, shadows, and ambient sounds gives the area a surreal quality, as though history itself has momentarily returned to the present. Personal encounters with these spirits are not uncommon. One visitor recounted walking along a misty path when a shadowy figure in uniform appeared just beyond the tree line, rifle slung over his shoulder, pausing to look in the direction of the observer before fading into the fog. Another described hearing the distinct sound of marching boots behind him on an open field, growing louder as though a unit was passing by, only for the sounds to vanish when he turned around. Others have reported witnessing soldiers carrying fallen comrades or kneeling over the wounded, only to vanish when approached. These fleeting but vivid experiences leave a lasting sense of awe, fear, and reverence for the history embedded in the land. Wildlife often behaves strangely in areas where apparitions are reported. Dogs may growl at seemingly empty spaces, birds take sudden flight, and deer hesitate to cross certain parts of the fields. These subtle reactions reinforce the impression that Marietta cemetery fields is more than just open land. It is a place where the energy of past conflict continues to manifest, where the echoes of history linger among the trees, grass, and fog. Paranormal investigators have documented a range of unusual phenomena here. Audio devices have captured faint voices, distant cries, and the echo of musket fire. Cameras and thermal imaging sometimes detect movement among trees and fog where no person is present. Temperature drops and cold spots are often sudden and localized, coinciding with sightings or auditory experiences. Electronic equipment occasionally malfunctions without explanation, from cameras failing to record images to flashlights dimming inexplicably, suggesting that residual energy from the battle continues to affect the environment. As night falls, Marietta Cemetery Fields takes on a particularly haunting quality. Shadows stretch across the fields, fog thickens, and cold drafts sweep through the area. Ghostly figures may be seen moving silently among the trees or across the open grass, accompanied by distant cries and the faint sound of marching feet. Occasional flashes of cannon fire light the horizon, and whispered commands seem to drift through the air. For those standing quietly in the fields at these moments, the past feels present, and the spirits of the fallen appear almost tangible. Visitors leaving Marietta Cemetery Fields often describe a mixture of awe, reverence, and unease. The shadowy figures, phantom cries, and flashes of cannon fire serve as haunting reminders of the sacrifice and bravery of those who fought and died here. The fields, trees, and foggy expanses are more than scenic vistas. They are living echoes of a violent past, a place where history and the supernatural intertwine. For those who walk attentively and respectfully, Marietta Cemetery Fields offers an immersive connection to the Civil War, where the spirits of soldiers continue to linger, and the battlefield itself seems to breathe with memory. Atlanta Battle Lines in Fulton County, Georgia, is a place where history and the supernatural intertwine. Today, many areas along the old battle lines appear as quiet streets, small parks, and urban neighborhoods, giving little hint of the intense fighting that took place there during the Civil War. Yet, beneath this modern landscape lies a past soaked in blood. During the city's siege, Union and Confederate forces clashed relentlessly, leaving thousands wounded or dead. Locals and visitors alike have long reported strange and unsettling phenomena: ghostly figures marching along former battle lines, phantom artillery fire echoing across empty streets, and disembodied cries that seem to rise from the very ground. These haunting occurrences have earned Atlanta Battle Lines a reputation as one of Georgia's most mysterious and eerie historical sites. Those who walk along these streets often report an immediate sense of unease. Even on warm, sunny days, a sudden chill can sweep across the area, passing through the observer without warning. The air sometimes feels heavy, almost charged with a presence that is invisible yet palpable. Footsteps are often heard where no one is present, the faint rustle of leaves or the echo of boots along cobblestone streets adding to the disquieting atmosphere. Visitors frequently describe the sensation of being watched, as if the past itself is observing their every move. Shadowy figures are among the most frequently reported phenomena at Atlanta Battle Lines. Witnesses describe ghostly soldiers appearing along the edges of streets, in vacant lots, or among the trees in small urban parks. Some march in formation as if executing maneuvers from a bygone era, while others appear alone, crouched behind objects or tending to unseen comrades. Many are seen carrying rifles or flags, their uniforms faded and indistinct but recognizable as those worn during the siege. These figures often vanish when approached, blending into the shadows or disappearing entirely, leaving only the impression of movement and a lingering sense of presence. Phantom artillery fire adds another chilling element to the area's haunted reputation. Even in the absence of storms or construction, observers report hearing the deep rumble of cannons, punctuated by sharp, explosive cracks that echo across streets and empty lots. The sounds sometimes seem to move unpredictably, as though a battle is replaying itself in fragments, circling around those who are present. Some witnesses have reported smelling faint traces of gunpowder accompanying these sounds, giving the experience an eerie authenticity that can leave visitors both amazed and unnerved. Disembodied voices are a hallmark of the hauntings at Atlanta Battle Lines. Observers frequently hear cries for help, soldiers calling orders, or the murmured conversation of men planning maneuvers. These sounds can drift through the streets, across sidewalks, and along the edges of parks, often fading as suddenly as they appear. Some visitors have described hearing names called, commands shouted to unseen units, or the anguished wails of wounded soldiers. The auditory phenomena often creates the impression that the battlefield has momentarily returned, replaying itself in echoes that bridge the gap between past and present. Misty conditions and fog are known to heighten the haunting atmosphere. On early mornings or cool evenings, low-hanging fog drifts across streets and through tree-lined avenues, settling in vacant lots and parks. Within this mist, shadowy figures are sometimes glimpsed, moving silently along the edges of the fog or between buildings. Occasional flickers of light appear amid the haze, floating above the streets or weaving through the trees, creating an ethereal, almost dreamlike scene. The combination of fog, shadows, and ambient sounds gives visitors the unsettling sensation that the past is momentarily merging with the present. Personal encounters are often reported by those walking the old battle lines. One local recounted seeing a group of ghostly soldiers advancing down a street as if following an invisible order, rifles raised, disappearing into the mist before she could approach. Another described hearing the echo of marching boots behind him along a deserted block. The sounds grew louder and closer, but vanished entirely when he turned. Others have reported witnessing phantom cannon flashes, fleeting shadows of men carrying wounded comrades, or ghostly figures standing silently as if observing the modern city around them. These encounters are brief yet leave a lasting impression, evoking both fear and awe. Even the city's wildlife appears affected by these lingering presences. Birds may scatter suddenly, dogs may growl at unseen figures, and cats sometimes hiss or retreat from areas where apparitions have been observed. These subtle reactions add to the sense that Atlanta Battle Lines is not merely a historic site but a location where the energy of past events continues to interact with the present environment. Paranormal investigators have documented a range of phenomena along these lines. Audio equipment has captured faint voices, commands, and the distant sounds of gunfire. Cameras and thermal imaging occasionally detect figures moving along streets or in parks where no person is present. Sudden temperature drops, localized cold spots, and malfunctions of electronic devices, flashlights dimming, cameras failing to capture images have all been reported. These occurrences suggest that the energy of the past remains embedded in the land, manifesting in ways that are both tangible and unnerving for those who encounter it. As night falls, the haunting qualities of Atlanta battle lines intensify. Occasionally, faint lights flicker where none should exist, casting an otherworldly glow over familiar urban landscapes. For those present during these moments, the past seems to press forward, and the courage, fear, and sacrifice of soldiers long dead feel almost tangible. Visitors leaving Atlanta battle lines often describe a mixture of awe, respect, and unease. The ghostly soldiers, phantom artillery, and disembodied voices serve as a haunting reminder of the city's turbulent past. The streets, parks, and vacant lots are more than modern urban spaces. They are living echoes of history, where the memory of battle continues to resonate. For those who walk attentively and respectfully, Atlanta Battle Lines offers an immersive connection to the Civil War, a place where the spirits of fallen soldiers remain, and the city itself carries the memory of a conflict that shaped its very foundations. Jonesboro Ridge in Jonesboro, Tennessee, is a place where history seems to linger in the mist and shadows. Today, the ridge is quiet, covered with dense woods and rolling fields that offer scenic views for hikers and history enthusiasts alike. Yet beneath this calm surface lies a violent past. During the Civil War, Jonesboro Ridge was the site of intense skirmishes, as Union and Confederate forces maneuvered for control of this strategic high ground. Soldiers charged across the open fields, rifle and musket fire rang out, and artillery thundered from concealed positions among the trees. Many men fell on the slopes, leaving the ridge steeped in blood and sacrifice. Over time, locals and visitors have come to believe that the spirits of those who died here remain, haunting the ridge and leaving a lingering, eerie presence that continues to affect all who tread its paths. Visitors often describe an immediate sense of unease when approaching Jonesboro Ridge. Even on clear, warm days, sudden cold drafts sweep across the trails and open fields, leaving hikers shivering without warning. Some report feeling watched, as if unseen eyes track their movements through the trees or across the ridged, open spaces. Leaves may rustle unexpectedly, branches snap, and the occasional creak of an old tree adds to the sensation of unseen presence. These subtle disturbances often escalate, especially as visitors move deeper into the ridge, creating an atmosphere thick with tension and the impression that the past has not entirely released its hold. Shadowy figures are among the most frequently reported phenomena on Jonesboro Ridge. Witnesses describe ghostly soldiers emerging from the woods or appearing along the crest of the ridge, sometimes moving in formation, sometimes alone. The figures are often seen in faded Union or Confederate uniforms, rifles held at the ready, their expressions grim, as if reliving the battles of long ago. Some appear to tend to fallen comrades or carry wounded soldiers across open fields before vanishing into the shadows or fog. These apparitions often dissolve when approached, leaving only a fleeting sense of movement and a lingering impression of presence. Phantom gunfire is a hallmark of the ridge's haunting. Visitors have reported hearing the sharp crack of rifles, the distant roar of artillery, or volleys of musket fire, often seeming to move around the observer. The sounds may come from different directions, creating a disorienting effect, as though the battle is replaying itself in fragments. Some witnesses have described accompanying flashes of light, brief glimpses of smoke or muzzle flashes, adding to the realism and intensity of the experience. Others report a faint smell of gunpowder lingering in the air, even when the wind is still, reinforcing the sense that the ridge retains echoes of the past. Distant cries of soldiers are another common phenomenon. Observers have reported hearing calls for help, anguished wails, or commands shouted across the ridge. These cries seem to rise and fade with the wind, sometimes echoing across open fields or through the woods, creating a haunting, almost cinematic soundscape. Some visitors claim to hear names called, orders given, or the murmured conversation of men coordinating maneuvers as if the battle has momentarily returned. These auditory experiences can be startling, leaving witnesses with a profound sense of the suffering and urgency that once filled the ridge. Misty conditions often heighten the haunting atmosphere of Jonesboro Ridge. Early mornings and late evenings frequently bring low-lying fog that drifts across the ridge, weaving through trees and settling over fields and trails. Within this mist, shadowy soldiers are sometimes glimpsed moving silently, their forms appearing and disappearing as they navigate the slopes. Occasional floating lights or orbs drift between the trees, flickering against the fog and creating a surreal, otherworldly quality. The combination of mist, shadows, and echoes of gunfire makes the ridge feel alive with memories of past conflict. Personal encounters with the ridge's spirits are often vivid and unsettling. One visitor described walking along a trail when a soldier appeared ahead, rifle in hand, watching silently before vanishing into the fog. Another recounted hearing the rhythmic thud of marching boots behind him, growing louder as if a unit approached, only to fade completely when he turned. Others have seen soldiers carrying wounded comrades, crouching over the fallen, or appearing in fleeting glimpses along the ridgeline. These experiences are intense but brief, leaving a lasting impression of awe, fear, and reverence for the history embedded in the landscape. Wildlife in the area sometimes reacts strangely in locations where apparitions are reported. Dogs may growl at empty air, birds scatter without apparent cause, and deer hesitate to cross certain paths or clearings. Paranormal investigators have documented a range of phenomena along the ridge. Audio recordings sometimes capture distant gunfire, commands, and cries that are not attributable to any living person. Thermal imaging occasionally detects figures moving through trees or across the ridge where no one is present. Sudden temperature drops and localized cold spots coincide with sightings or auditory experiences. Electronic devices may fail unexpectedly, with cameras malfunctioning or flashlights dimming without cause, suggesting that the residual energy of past conflict remains strong in the area. As night falls, Jonesboro Ridge becomes particularly eerie. Shadows stretch across the trails, fog thickens among the trees, and cold drafts sweep the fields. Ghostly soldiers appear moving silently along the ridge. Phantom gunfire echoes in the distance, and distant cries seem to float across the landscape. Occasionally, faint lights flicker among the trees or along the slopes, adding to the surreal quality of the ridge. For those present at these moments, the past feels present, and the courage, fear, and sacrifice of soldiers long dead becomes almost tangible. Visitors leaving Jonesboro Ridge often describe a mix of awe, respect, and unease. The shadowy soldiers, phantom gunfire, and distant cries serve as a haunting reminder of the men who fought and died here. For those who walk attentively and respectfully, Jonesboro Ridge offers a profound connection to the Civil War, a place where the spirits of the fallen linger, and the ridge itself seems alive with memory. There, you have it, 25 haunted battlefields in Georgia, still echoing gunfire. From Civil War clashes to skirmishes lost to time, these battlefields are more than historical sites. They are monuments to tragedy, courage, and restless spirits. Shadowy soldiers, phantom musket fire, and ghostly cries remind us that some battles never truly end, and some souls never leave the field. If tonight's journey through Georgia's haunted battlefields sent chills down your spine, make sure to subscribe, ring the bell, and join us for more explorations of haunted locations, historical mysteries, and the echoes of the past that linger in silence. Keep your lanterns close, your senses sharp, and your courage steady. Because in Georgia's haunted battlefields, the guns still fire, and the soldiers are always watching. Stay brave, stay curious, and good night.